evening. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the April 17th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. My name is Susan Finch, and I'll be presiding as the hearing master over this evening's cases. Let me welcome to our dais for the first time, Ms. Michelle Heinrich. She's with the Development Services Department. She will now be leading this effort. Mr. Grady is, I've been joking, going to be on the beach somewhere. He's been doing this so many years, but anyway. So, Ms. Heinrich, if you will introduce the other staff members on the dais and go over any changes we have tonight for tonight's agenda.
Sure. Also joining us to my left is Mary Dorman with the County Attorney's Office and Melissa Leinhardt with the Planning Commission. And we do have two staff or continuance requests that need to be taken up for you to deem if those are continued or not. The first one is agenda page 6, item C4, standard rezoning 23-0082.
All right, is the applicant here? If you could give us your name and address before you start.
Todd Pressman, 200 2nd Avenue South, number 451 in St. Petersburg. We received a number of concerns and communications from the neighborhood and the Lewd Civic Association. So we are seeking to continue to June. I'm already making arrangements to meet with any interested citizens. We did send a letter out just making folks aware that we would be asking for this, not indicating that it would be approved, but that we were going to make the request this evening. We're also looking at making fundamental changes as to what was originally submitted to reduce or looking at reducing and potentially limiting what's being requested from the original application. So changes to the application, change to the zoning, and having a good discussion with residents who have brought concerns.
All right, and you think you can accomplish that by June 20th?
Yes, I'm already in touch with two locations up in North County for the meeting. As soon as this is approved, we'll schedule those or confirm those and then send out a notice.
All right, let me ask the audience, either in the room or online, if there's anyone here to speak to item C4 on the agenda. It's rezoning 23-0082. If you'd like to address the continuance only, not the merits of the case, please feel free to come forward.
We're okay with the continuance.
All right. Sir, I'm sorry, but you do have to be on the record. If you could just give us your name and address real quick.
Jay Muffley, 102 5th Avenue Southeast, Lutz, Florida, 33549.
All right, and you're okay with the continuance? It would be to June 20th at 6 p.m.
Rather do it tonight, but I understand his concerns.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Is there anyone else that would like to address the continuance? All right, seeing no one, then we'll continue rezoning 23-0082 to the June 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master hearing at 6 p.m. Ms. Heinrich, you said there was a second one?
Correct. The second one is agenda page 7. This is standard rezoning 23-023-203, and the applicant is requesting continuance to the June 20th Zoning Hearing Master hearing.
All right, is the applicant here for that item? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Susan Swift, Planning Director for Boggs Engineering, and we would like to request also to the June 20th. So we will also re-advertise or re-notice before that time. And we just need a little bit more time on a couple of items.
All right, let me see if there's anyone who would like to speak to that. Is there anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak to the continuance of rezoning 23-0203, just the continuance only, not the merits of the case? All right, seeing no one, then we'll continue rezoning 23-0203 to June 20th, 2023, zoning hearing master hearing at 6 p.m. Thank you.
And the remainder of changes to the agenda is agenda page 8, item D2, PD application 22-01204. This application has been withdrawn from the ZHM process. Also, agenda page 9, item PD 22-1640. Staff is requesting a continuance of this application to the May 15th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. And agenda page 10, and that is PD 22-1706. And staff is requesting a continuance to the May 15th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing.
Thank you so much.
And that concludes the changes, and now I'll go through the withdrawals, published withdrawals, and continuances. The first item is item A1, PD 22-0648. This application is being continued by the applicant to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A2, Major Mod 22-0671. This application is continued by the applicant to the May 15th, 2023 hearing. Item A3, Major Mod 22-0689. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A4, PD 22-0877. This application is being continued by the applicant to the May 15th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A5, Major Mod 22-1239. This application is out of order to be heard and is continued to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A6, PD 22-1257. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A7, PD 22-1330. This application is being continued by the applicant to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A8, PD 22-1390. This application is being continued by staff to the May 15th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A9, PD 22-1497. This application is being withdrawn from the ZHM process. Item A10, PD 22-1503. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A11, Major Mod 22-1510. This application is being continued by the applicant to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A12, Major Mod 22-1543. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the August 21st, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A13, PD 22-1577. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A14, Major Mod 22-1637. This application is out of order to be heard and is continued to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A15, 22-1638. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A16, Major Mod 1639. This application is being continued by the applicant to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A17, PD 22-1647. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A18, PD 22-1688. This application is being continued by the applicant to the May 15th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A19, PD 22-1701. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A20, PD 22-1703. This application is being continued by the applicant to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. And lastly, item A21, PD 23-0041. This application is being continued by the applicant to the May 15th, 2023 ZHM hearing. And that concludes the agenda.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let me start by going over our hearing procedures. Our hearing today consists of agenda items that require a public hearing by a zoning hearing master. I'll conduct a hearing on each agenda item and will file a recommendation within 15 business days following tonight's hearing. Those recommendations are then sent to the Board of County Commissioners, who make the final decision on each item. Our hearing tonight is informal. I'll ask questions related to the scope of direct testimony. I may call and question witnesses as I deem appropriate, and I will decide all questions of procedure. I'll take evidence, but will exclude evidence that is irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious. Evidence may be presented in written form, and all testimony must be under oath. Hearsay evidence may be used to support or supplement other evidence, but shall not be sufficient alone to support a finding by me unless it would be admissible over objections in a civil action. Our order of presentation for tonight's cases is as follows. Ms. Heinrich of the Development Services Department will make a brief introduction of each agenda item. Then we turn to the applicant. The applicant and their team has a total of 15 minutes to present their request. Next, Development Services will go to the staff planner assigned to the case. They'll have 5 minutes to discuss the county's findings in their staff report. Then we'll turn to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission also has 5 minutes to discuss the application's consistency with the county's comprehensive plan. Next up would be proponents, anyone who would like to speak in favor of an application. Total proponent presentation time is 15 minutes. Second, we'll go then to opponents, anyone who would like to speak against an application, also 15 minutes for everyone total. We'll then go back to the Development Services Department, who has 5 minutes to make any comments or address any issues that come up during our discussion. And then finally, we go back to the applicant. The applicant has 5 minutes with the last word for rebuttal. Regarding that time for those 15 minutes for both proponents and opponents, that is total. So if there are a number of people, I'll ask to raise their hand. We also have people participating tonight in this hearing virtually. So I'll just, with a show of hands, count how many people want to speak, either in favor or against, and we will have that 15 minutes divided equally as best we can. We have kind of a full agenda tonight, so we want to make sure we adhere to those timeframes so that we get everyone heard. When you come up to the podium to speak, or if you are online, always start by giving us your name and address for the record. We are recording this hearing, and we want to make sure that we get your name and address correct. And when you're done speaking, if you are in the room, if you could see Joe, he's at the end of the dais, he's with the clerk's office, and he is keeping a log sheet. And then when you're done speaking, if you're in the room, like as I said, sign in with your name and address and also that application number that you were speaking about. Let me now turn to Ms. Dorman. She's with the County Attorney's Office, and she'll provide you the legal requirements which govern your participation at the Board of County Commissioners meeting. Ms. Dorman.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. Mary Dorman from the County Attorney's Office. Tonight's public hearing is the first step of a two-step rezoning process. This hearing is the time for rezoning applicants and interested parties to present testimony and evidence. Any evidence presented tonight will become the complete record, or the complete factual record of each application, and no additional evidence can be introduced after the closing of each application. The second step of the rezoning process is a public meeting before the Board of County Commissioners, where the board will make a decision on each application heard tonight. Tonight's applications are scheduled to be heard by the board at its June 13th, 2023 land use meeting. When considering applications, the board will only review the record created at tonight's hearing and the recommendation made by the land use hearing officer for each application. The land use hearing officer will file a recommendation for each application heard tonight by May 8th, 2023. The Board of County Commissioners has established a policy that directs which rezoning and major modification applications are to be placed on the consent agenda of the board's land use meeting. Applications that propose to add density outside the urban service area, applications that are on roadways with a failing level of service, and applications that have had evidence or testimony provided to the record by non-applicant parties of the record, either prior to or at the public hearing tonight, are not qualified for placement on the consent agenda. Applications which do not have consistent recommendations of approval or denial are also not qualified to be placed on the consent agenda. The board shall allow public testimony by parties of record at its meeting to consider the land use hearing officer's recommendation for any item on the regular agenda. Any public testimony shall be limited to the record of the proceedings before the land use hearing officer unless additional evidence has been found admissible in accordance with Section 10.03.04D of the Land Development Code. A party of record is an individual who fits into at least one of the following four categories. First, an individual who is present tonight and presents testimony or documentary evidence. Second, an individual certified by the U.S. Postal Service as having been mailed notice of tonight's hearing. Third, an individual who submitted documentary evidence to the master file at least 2 business days prior to tonight's hearing. Or fourth, an individual who submitted documentary evidence by proxy at tonight's hearing. Again, the content of oral argument before the board shall be limited to the content of the testimony and other evidence submitted verbally or in writing to the land use hearing officer tonight. It is the role of the county attorney's office to ensure that only individuals who have met these requirements are allowed to speak before the board and to ensure that no new evidence or testimony is introduced or allowed at the board's public meeting. For these reasons, please make sure that all information you wish the board to consider at its public meeting is entered into tonight's record. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dorman. I appreciate it. All right, as I mentioned, all testimony must be under oath. So if you plan to speak tonight, if you could please stand and raise your right hand, and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you so much. Please be seated. All right, Ms. Heinrich, we're ready for the first case.
Ms. Finch, before we go into the regular agenda, we did need to bring up 2 applications that need to be dealt with, hopefully at the beginning. And the first one is agenda item C2, which is standard rezoning 22-1681. We've been notified that as of the beginning of this hearing, outstanding agency review comments have not been received, and those are required to be a part of the record that will close at tonight's hearing. So therefore, that case needs to continue to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing.
Okay. Is there anyone, just for the record, is there anyone here that wanted to speak to agenda item C2, rezoning 22-1681, either in the room or online?
And Madam Hearing Officer, the issue is a school board comment. We're required that if we don't have the school board comment, it cannot go forward. So that's the issue, is that.
Okay.
And they require an additional review fee, and if the review fee is not paid and then we don't receive the comment, then we cannot go forward. And so that's the issue with this one, C2, and there's also another item.
All right. So just so everyone knows, that rezoning 22-1681 is continuing to June 20th at 6 p.m., correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
The other item is item C6, standard rezoning 23-0115. This application does not contain school board review comments, which are not available at the time of this meeting. Therefore, it will need to be continued to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing.
All right. For the record, anyone here on notice that that item will not be heard tonight, rezoning 23-0115, continued to June 20th, 2023. Sir, did you have a question? If you could give us your name and address, please.
My name is Michael Shea, and I'm an attorney, city planner, and my address is 6301 Bayshore Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, 33611.
And did you have a question about that item, that agenda item?
When is it going to be heard again?
They've rescheduled it to June 20th, 2023 at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Will I receive a notice? I represent the Chapmans.
Yes, you will receive
Thank you.
notice.
Thank you, sir. Was there someone else that wanted to address that item? No. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry, sir. You need to come forward and be on the microphone. Give us your name and address real quick.
Good evening. I'm the applicant for the 0115.
All right, could you give us your name and address, please?
Hey, what?
Your name and address.
My name is Dilip Agarwal, and I represent Buisel Investments Corporation.
All right, sir. So I guess by county policy, the school board comments were not available, so the item cannot be heard this evening, so it's being continued to June 20th at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
If he has any more questions, he can speak to Isis Brown. If Isis, if you can raise your hand.
The
she
staff
can-
planner is
yes.
over there, and you can ask her anything you like.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right. Then we'll go forward with the first agenda item, correct? Okay.
That would be item C1, Standard Rezoning Application 22-1431. The applicant is requesting to rezone property zone RSC2 to CNR, Neighborhood Commercial with Restrictions. Chris Greenland of staff will present his findings after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening, Todd Pressman, 200 Second Avenue South, number 451 in St. Petersburg. Have a PowerPoint for you. Yep, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. Is that up for you?
I do see it, yes, sir.
Thank you. This is RZ 22-1431, which is 2.31 acres, zoned RSC2, seeking commercial neighborhood zoning with restrictions. Located in the northwest area of the county, and specifically located at Racetrack Road and Gun Highway on the southwest corner. This is a view of the intersection, lit intersection. The site is located there in the corner in yellow. There is quite a bit of traffic on both roadways. They're obviously very busy roadways. Racetrack Road carries 13,438 vehicles per day, and the arterial roadway carries 19,500 vehicles per day. That's per the Planning Commission website vehicle counts. Now, in regard to the zoning map, there is an existing kitty corner from the site, and there is an OR located to the rear. And as we looked at this request, and we looked at it closely to what we felt would best meet this corner property, is that it's not conducive or appropriate for residential anymore, and commercial general is too intensive for the area. So our determination was that CN would be a good fit, and beyond that, with some restrictions for uses that would not be appropriate, at least in our opinion. So the uses restricted are self-service laundries, blood plasma donation centers, outdoor recreation uses, and ambulance services. C on commercial, purpose is to provide for limited retail uses, personal services, freestanding buildings, applied at appropriate locations to supply daily retail service needs, which is felt, opinion-wise, that it's needed in this area, will not adversely impact facilities, services of the county, and where, importantly, it will not set a precedent for the introduction of inappropriate uses into an area. We thought that was an important statement under what C and commercial neighborhood is defined as. According to future land use objective 22 and policy 22.2, the subject site does meet commercial location criteria and would also limit the commercial development to 20,000 square feet. So a good example is to the north on Gun Highway, which is Fox's Corner, about 3 or 4 miles to the north. And granted, yes, it is a special overlay in that community plan, certainly, and recognizes that those uses are permissible. But we felt it's a good example at another major corner of residential support uses, which this site does have very good residential support uses, and from everything we could see and understand and review, it works very well and provides those type of uses at what we consider to be a similar intersection. When you look at the Keystone Odessa Community Plan, when it speaks about other commercial, it notes desired rural commercial character includes uses which are small in scale, both in square footage and individual structures, which this would be. And under Rural Activity Center, the Keystone Odessa Community does desire to have uses that are geared to serving daily needs of area residents in scale and design that complements the character of the community. So in terms of this particular location, in regard to how busy that intersection is, in terms of some directives, both the zoning and the overlay plan, we feel that it's an appropriate request. I would like to move over to the overhead, if I may. Do I have to push anything? Oh, there it is. So this is the, oh, thank you.
Mr. Pressman, you've submitted this
Yes.
before, previously?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's included in the thumb drive. So
Thank you.
this is included, this is just in the middle of the afternoon, some of the activity at the intersection, both north and south, and east and west. And unfortunately, I had the volume up, but we don't have a free mic anymore. So these are large trucks and a lot of vehicles passing directly by the site, which is, again, part of our contention is that it's not conducive for residential. CG is too intensive. So we felt in the middle, CN, where there's other CN, a stone's throw across the street would be a very appropriate request. And again, and just one more short video, just again documenting truck traffic, vehicle traffic. And again, this is high noon, 1 p.m. Obviously, in the mornings and afternoons, it's much, much busier. And it's very loud. And then, of course, traffic starts to back up on Gunn as it begins to go through the intersection and attempt to go west and deal with the north and south traffic, which just finished its cycle. So that's what our thinking. We think that's very appropriate, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. All right, Development Services. Good evening.
Good evening. Chris Graumenard, Development Services Planner, here to present our rezoning 22-1431. The approximate 2.32 acre vacant parcel is zoned RSC2, residential single-family conventional. The subject parcel is located at the southwest corner of Racetrack Road and Gunn Highway. The area consists of single-family residential, agricultural, institutional, and commercial. The subject parcel is directly adjacent to single-family residential zoned RSC2 to the south and west. To the east across Gunn Highway is a tree farm with single-family residential zoned ASC1. To the north across Racetrack Road is single-family residential zoned RSC2. Further west on the Racetrack Road is a church zone CN commercial neighborhood and also a single-family residential with a doctor's office zoned OR office residential. The subject property is designated residential 1 on the future land use map. Development Services and the Planning Commission have compatibility concerns because the Keystone Odessa Community Plan describes that commercial uses should be agriculturally related if they're outside of that designated rural activity center area. Also, any potential business in the proposed commercial neighborhood restricted would impact the surrounding neighborhood with noise and traffic. In response to these concerns, the applicant, as noted, has offered the following restriction. The applicant seeks to restrict self-service laundries, blood plasma donation centers, outdoor recreational uses, and ambulance services. We feel the proposed restriction does not address community plan compatibility concerns and that commercial uses should be agriculture related, nor does it sufficiently address impacts to the surrounding neighborhood area. The proposed commercial neighborhood restricted zoning, we feel, does not fit into the rural character of the community. Based on residential 1 future land use classification, the surrounding zoning, development pattern, and the proposed uses for the commercial neighborhood restricted district, staff finds the request not supportable. That concludes my staff report. Would I answer any questions?
Just a question, if you can tell me if you have a graphic or something that shows me that Keystone Odessa community plan, if the rural activity center within that and show where this parcel is? I understand by your staff report it's outside of it.
Yeah, I don't have that. The planning commission would
Maybe
would
Ms.
be
Leinart
the,
can pull that up for me.
yeah, they would have that.
All
If
right.
they might have it on hand.
All right, that was my only question.
Okay,
Thank
have a
you
good
so
day.
much, I appreciate it. All right, planning commission.
Thank you. For the record, Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located within the Residential 1 Future Land Use category. The site is in the rural area, and also the subject property is located within the limits of the Keystone Odessa Community Plan. Typical uses in the Residential 1 Future Land Use category include farms, ranches, residential uses, rural-scale neighborhood commercial uses, and offices. In this category, non-residential uses are required to meet commercial locational criteria. The subject site is surrounded by the Residential 1 Future Land Use category on all sides. Farther west is designated as natural preservation, and further south is Residential 2. The intent of the rural area is to provide land that is intended for long-term agricultural uses and large lot, low-density rural residential uses that can exist without the threat of urban or suburban encroachment. While the applicant is proposing to restrict some of the commercial neighborhood zoning district uses, the CN zoning district allows for a range of other commercial uses that are not consistent with the rural character intended for the rural area. The proposed rezoning does not meet the intent of Objective 16 of the future land use element and its associated policies relating to neighborhood protection. The subject site is surrounded by single-family residential dwellings and vacant residentially zoned lands. The proposed CN zoning district uses would likely present a significant compatibility concern given the existing development pattern. According to Future Land Use Element Objective 22 and Policy 22.2, the subject site meets commercial locational criteria and would limit commercial development to 20,000 square feet. It is within the required 660 feet from the closest qualifying intersection of Gun Highway and Racetrack Road. Although the site does meet commercial locational criteria, per Future Land Use Element Policy 22.7, these are not the only criteria to be used in determining the approval of a proposed use. Per this policy direction, considerations of other factors, such as those involving land use compatibility, carry more weight than meeting commercial locational criteria. The subject site does not meet the intent of the Keystone Odessa Community Plan. The plan states the desire for rural commercial uses outside of the rural activity center to be specifically geared towards serving the agricultural and equestrian interests in the area. The subject site is located outside of the rural activity center, which is located at the intersection of Gun Highway and North Mobley Road. The applicant has proposed uses that are inconsistent with the rural commercial character outlined in this community plan and is therefore inconsistent with the community plan vision for Keystone Odessa. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning inconsistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. And if I may, Madam Hearing Master, I was able to pull up the intersection, though I'm not able to show it up there. I can tell you that the Rural Activity Center of Gun Highway and North Mobley is almost 5,000 feet north of this site.
All right. So I think you did touch that on your, that issue on your presentation. So it's at North Mobley and Gunn. That's the
Yes, ma'am.
closest one?
Yes.
Okay, 5,000 feet away. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, we'll call for anyone that would like to speak in support. Any proponents, either in the room or online? Seeing none. Anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this request? All right, how many hands? I see 4 hands, 5 hands. Okay, don't be shy, 5 hands. Anyone online? No?
Don't believe anyone is in opposition online.
Okay, perfect. So, well, let me back up. Did we have someone in support online?
I believe we did. Ariel, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Mm-hmm.
All right, so you wanted to testify in support. Is that correct?
I do, yes.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Go ahead with Ariel.
Yes.
Yes, well, first of all, I want to thank everyone's participation in this. It's as a community, we need to hear from everyone, and I'm very appreciative of the Development Services and the Planning Commission for their sites, their thoughts and suggestions on this parcel. I've been living
I'm
in
so
this
sorry to
area.
interrupt, but the speaker needs to have his camera on.
Here I am.
We don't see you yet. The county has a policy, we
There
require
you
that.
go.
There
No,
you
no, I'm
go.
sorry.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
I wasn't even thinking of.
No
about that, so-
problem. We see you now.
Anyway,
Go
so-
ahead.
So thank everyone for that. And I understand, because I've been living in this community for, 25 years, and I've been building and developing in this area for a long time, and I've always been very respectful of our area and the property, in this area. So it was, again, residential, I thought was a little difficult for the area. And I'm in total agreement of restricting the uses just for either offices or for agricultural and equestrian uses to rent, because I think in our area, it's difficult to drive way too far if you have a small office, if you have a small equestrian business. And I think there's a need for that type of business out here that does give much less of an impact on that property than residential. So that was my thought process and Todd Pressman's thought process of applying for this CN zoning. And I would be definitely willing to restrict it more for the small offices in order to provide that type of service to this community. Because everyone knows with residential, you could do all sorts of things, and you could build all sorts of different types of product there, garages and so forth. And that really doesn't help our area. So I kind of would like to find some type of happy medium that it does provide some type of benefit to this area versus just doing the residential because of what we discussed, the corner, the busyness and so forth and so on. But, my position is that I will be willing to listen to some restricted uses and just kind of keep it simple and build them exactly to the character of the neighborhood, and to allow a little unification of both work and work, home and work in this area. So that's what was my thought process by submitting this. And I understand that the incompatibility if it is zoned with other type of product and other kind of uses. But I do think that corner would be viable for something with limited uses, but for people who want to work closer to home. And that was my whole purpose behind this.
All right, sir, thank you for your testimony. I really appreciate it. So that closes the testimony in support. We'll go to testimony in opposition. We had 5 hands, I believe, 5 people that wanted to speak. Is that correct? All right, then Joe, if you can divide that 15 minutes, we'll give you 3 minutes apiece to make it fair. If you want to take less, that would be awesome. So if you could bring that microphone down to you, perfect, and give me your name and address.
For short people. My name is Clara Lawhead. I am the president-elect of the Keystone Civic Association, and I'm here representing the Keystone community. For those who are not going to speak, I'd like for those who are in opposition to please stand at this time. Okay, these are Keystone residents. With no offense to Ariel, this is something that's very important for us to get across. The Keystone Civic Association members and residents agree with the findings of the staff of the Hillsborough County Planning Commission as found in the unincorporated Hillsborough County rezoning report dated April 8th, that this petition is incompatible. The membership voted on March 23, 2023, unanimously to oppose the rezoning this rezoning that is inconsistent with the Keystone Odessa Community Plan. Based on the consideration, staff found that the request for the CNR zoning district was incompatible with the existing zoning and development pattern of the area. The request is compatible and inconsistent with the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, the FLU objectives, the Keystone Odessa Community Plan, and the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Based on the staff's considerations as cited in the staff's finding, the request is not supportable, and we therefore would like to suggest that it be denied. This does set a precedent, contrary to Mr. Pressman. The traffic is much worse than the pictures that he showed you. Sometimes it can take 30 minutes to go 2 miles. Restrictions, I agree with. I think that's something that needs to be really seriously considered, and the Keystone Civic Association has invited Ariel to come to the board meeting on May 8th to talk about more restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. Next, please. Good evening.
My name is Elizabeth White. I reside at 17905 Burrell Road in Odessa. I've lived in the Keystone community for 26 years. I oppose the proposed rezoning from residential single-family conventional to commercial. In the comprehensive plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County regarding future land use, policy 16.1, established and planned neighborhoods and communities shall be protected by restricting incompatible land uses. This zoning is not compatible with existing land use. Per the livable communities element, Keystone Odessa, the intersection at Gun Highway and North Mobley Road is recognized as a rural activity center by the community. The location of this proposed commercial zoning is not at this location. Improving existing protection of water resources is a high priority in Keystone. This property is located in a wellhead protection area. County utilities, water, are requested with this zoning. This goes against the Keystone Community Plan and Hillsborough County's own comprehensive plan regarding no county utilities in the rural service area. In a Tampa Bay Times article published on March 26, 1999, a 7-Eleven was proposed at Gun Highway and Racetrack Road. In addition to the community opposition, both the Planning Commission and county zoning staff denied this application. If approved, the project would set into motion inevitable changes to other parcels in the area, said planner Steve Allison. The zoning analysis Keystone Odessa Community Plan found on the planhillsborough.org website summarizes zoning petitions in the Keystone Odessa Community Plan area and is intended to act as background information that the citizens of the Keystone Odessa Advisory Committee can use to review the history of the zonings that have taken place in our community from 2004 to 2010. In this document, it addresses a similar rezoning request. Petition 05-1119 was found inconsistent. The request was to allow commercial development outside the intersection at Gun Highway and North Mobley Road, which the Keystone Odessa Plan designates as the rural activity center of the community. This intersection to be called to be designed to serve the majority of the community's daily shopping needs. This petition, not within the rural activity center at the Gun Highway and North Mobley intersection, did not otherwise meet locational criteria set forth in the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. We absolutely agree with the Planning Commission finding this rezoning is inconsistent with goals, objectives, and policies of unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan and the Keystone Community Plan. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. If you could please sign in. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Melissa Nordbeck, 6008 Hammock Woods Drive, Odessa, 33556. In opposition to RZ STD 22-143. The applicant has not produced any plans or design elements for this rezoning, yet wants approval for a commercial rezoning with public utilities in a rural community. They have submitted a 2017 traffic study that obviously misrepresents present-day traffic volume in the area. The Keystone Odessa area is protected by its own comprehensive plan. It limits residential development and restricts commercial development. It contains requirements for scenic corridors, and development must reflect the rural character of the community. Development Service and the Planning Commission have labeled this rezoning as inconsistent. To allow a commercial rezoning in the center of Keystone with public utilities will set into motion inevitable changes to other parcels in the area. Especially troublesome as this property is located in a wellhead protection area. There is a sound legal argument to deny this rezoning. The property is in the Residential 1 future land use category. This property does not meet the criteria for utilities. Commercial development of this property does not meet the gradual transition of intensities between different land uses. Rezoning of this property would open the door for strip development, as the 2 parcels next door are vacant as well, and front Gun Highway, and 1 is currently listed for sale. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. If you could please sign in next. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joe Duncan. My address is 11311 Hutchins Avenue, Odessa, 33556. I'm here to oppose this request. I am a resident within the area for 16 years, and I can tell you convenience is not one thing that we look for. Living in a rural area, we moved out in our area because of the ruralness of it, and there's no commercial buildings around us. We don't mind driving. We don't mind going out. The request for this was simply ridiculous. There's a beautiful horse farm right across the street in which the presenter failed to show. His back was to it the whole time. And this area does not want, and we're not asking for any kind of commercial building. No matter how much people say we do want it, we don't. As a resident, I can tell you in a rural area, that's the last thing we want. We don't mind being inconvenient by going somewhere or driving to someplace. That's what we want. We want peace and quiet and not a bunch of commercial buildings around us. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. If you could please sign in. Is there one more? Yes, sir. Good evening.
I'm Ward Netcher. I live at 18421 Gun Highway, Odessa, Florida. As a lifelong resident of Keystone, Odessa, I oppose this application. It is not consistent with the Keystone Community Plan, which was written to protect the rural lifestyle of the residents. Why would a request changing from residential to commercial even be considered in our agricultural residential neighborhood? And Fox's Corner is only 1 mile from the proposed site, not 3 or 4 miles away. I wonder what other statements were fudged intentionally or otherwise not properly researched. Additionally omitted is the Village Shopping Center about a mile south of the site. No mention was made of the vacancies across the street from Fox's Corner, which was the alleged closest shopping area. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. I appreciate it. If you
You're
could please
welcome.
sign in. All right, seeing no one else that wants to speak in opposition, we'll go back to Development Services. Anything you'd like to add, Ms. Heinrich?
No further questions. However, we would ask when the applicant comes up, if he could confirm for us that the videos he showed is either already in the record or was provided to the clerk tonight.
I did ask that, but we'll have him confirm that. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, did you need us to sign in as opposition even though we did not speak?
No, no, you don't. Unless you wanted to be a part of the record, you can come to the podium. I'll allow it if you'd like to put your name and address on the record, and then you could sign in if you'd like. That preserves your right to speak at the Board of County Commissioners if you'd like. All right, then I'll assume that you don't want to do that. All right, Mr. Pressman, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Let me say, first of all, that I have the greatest respect for residents who trudge on down to the county for an evening to speak about an issue that's important to them. So I respect everyone who came down and hear the comments quite clearly, and you heard Ariel's comments. I did have an error, which was I did indicate that Fox's Corner to the north was 3 or 4 miles. That was incorrect. That's my error. And in no criticism or any debate with the neighbors who came up, I do just want to clarify that as I look through all of the comments that were in Ceullar, we did 3 separate notices, including the yellow sign, and by my counting, there was not a single abutting resident abutting this site who had made a comment. I tried to follow the addresses tonight, but that was a little bit difficult to do. I say that only because I think it's important posture-wise or to have a perspective as to where the comments are coming from and what they are. The folks here with the Lutz Civic Association obviously look at their entire area, and there's clearly a difference in zoning if there's residents abutting to the site in concern. But in having a little communication with Ariel, what we'd like to do, and as I believe she identified herself as the president of Lutz Civic Association, they invited Ariel to speak on May 8th. which we'd like to accommodate. So I would like to raise at this point, if we can continue this, if possible, to the June hearing. They can meet with the citizens, and we can come back. And clearly, Ariel is obviously very open to making, I would say, significant changes to what's proposed tonight.
Mr. Pressman, hold that thought 1 second. Well, actually, let's ask Ms. Heinrich's question first to verify on the record that the video that you showed earlier as part of your presentation was submitted to the clerk's office.
Yes, they
Thumb
were.
Drive.
Yes.
So it was. All right, Ms. Heinrich, are they within the time frame to request a continuance to June? Is that appropriate? With the time frame to hear a case by the Land Development Code?
Would you have to renotice? Yeah, that could be accommodated to the June 20th.
And they would have to
2023.
renotice the adjacent property owners? Is that correct? All right. All right. So if that's the request, then we'll grant it for continuance. You said the meeting with the association is what date?
The woman who identified herself as president said it was May 8th. First I heard of it, so that'll be conducive and allow Ariel to move forward with changes that he was beginning to speak about.
I ask that not because it's a part of this process, but in case anyone's watching that is interested, that association meeting would be May 8th. But this hearing, the zoning hearing master hearing for this case, rezoning 22-1431 would be continued to the June 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing at 6 p.m.
And we appreciate your time, the staff and the folks who came down tonight. Thank you very much.
And what I would like to caution you, Mr. Pressman, when we do come back, that we not have to revisit the entire case, that perhaps you can work with the residents and we'll focus, rather than have this entire hearing again on June 20th, we would focus on just what the changes would be. Hopefully you can come to some resolution.
Well, that's clearly the applicant's intent. Thank you.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it. Ms. Heinrich, we'll go to the next case.
The next application, agenda.
I'm sorry to
item-
interrupt. I apologize. The president of the Civic Association indicated the date for meeting with citizens would be May 11th, not May 8th, so I apologize for interrupting. Again, that's May 11th.
All right, thank you for
Thank
that
you.
clarification, I appreciate it.
Our next item is item C3, standard rezoning 23-0081. The applicant is requesting to rezone property currently zoned RSC 6 to RSC 6 with a mobile home overlay. Isis Brown will present staff findings after applicant's presentation.
Good evening, how are you?
Good evening.
You give us your name and address to start.
My name is Alexa Vargas, and before anything, I'm here to translate my stepdad, who is, we live in 115 Railroad Street, Waimama, Florida, and we're here asking to rezone for the property 302 Railroad Street, Waimama, Florida, 33598, and we're asking to rezone from RSC-6 to RSC-6 mobile home. We would like to put a mobile home because to build a home on this property is too expensive for us. We appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. If you could please sign in with the
Yeah.
clerk's office. Development Services. Good evening.
Good evening. Isis Brown, Development Services. And as stated by the applicant, the request is to rezone from RSC 6 to RSC 6 with mobile home overlay. The surrounding properties are zoned RSC 6 and RSC 6 with a mobile home overlay to the north and south. To the west is the RSC 6, and to the east is RSC 6 with a mobile home overlay as well. The future land use category is residential 6. The site, although located in an area comprised of rural low-density residential and low-density residential with mobile home overlay, the site is located within the Hillsborough County urban service area and should be serviced by the county for water and wastewater. I'd like to note that the property is also located within a 500 feet of the potable water well, and therefore allowable uses may be further prohibited, restricted in accordance with LDC Part 3.05.05, And additionally, the subject parcel is also located within the downtown center district of Waimama Downtown Overlay District, but pursuant to LEC Section 3.23.02B1, the subject parcel is not subjected to the design standards within that overlay district of the Waimama Downtown. Based on the considerations above stated, staff finds the request approvable.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Planning Commission.
Melissa Lightenhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the Residential 6 Future Land Use category. It is in the urban service area, and the subject property is also located within the limits of the Waimama Community Plan and the South Shore Area Wide Systems Plan. The Residential 6 Future Land Use category is intended to designate areas that are suitable for low-density residential development. The Residential 6 Future Land Use category surrounds the subject site. To the northwest is a small pocket of Residential 9, and further south is the Office Commercial 20 Future Land Use category. To the east is the Waimama Village Residential 2 or WVR2 Future Land Use category. The proposed rezoning meets the intent of the neighborhood protection policies of Future Land Use Element Objective 16 and its accompanying policies. The development pattern of the surrounding area shows several other mobile homes and mobile home overlays along Railroad Street and Edina Street. A rezoning to RSC 6 with a mobile home overlay would reflect a development pattern that is in keeping with the existing development pattern consistent with this policy direction. In addition, Future Land Use Element Objective 20 encourages new development and redevelopment of residential housing for special target groups. Policy 20.2 recognizes manufactured housing as a viable means to provide affordable housing. Rezoning the subject property to include a mobile home overlay is consistent with this policy direction. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Is there anyone who would like to speak in support in the room or online? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to this request? No one? Development Services, Ms. Heinrich?
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay. We'll go back to the applicant who has the last word. All right, I don't see any comments. All right, then, no. All right, thank you, Rosa. Then we'll close rezoning 23-0081 and go to the next case.
Our next case is item C5, standard rezoning 23-0100. The applicant is requesting property currently zoned RSC1 and CN to the CN zoning district. Isis Brown will present staff findings after application by the applicant.
All right, I understand the applicant is virtual.
Yes, good evening, Madam Hearing Officer.
Good evening.
My name is David Wright, President of TSP Companies. Our address is P.O. Box 273417, Tampa 33688, and I have been sworn. Tonight I'm presenting a request to rezone the subject property from commercial neighborhood and agricultural single-family residential conventional 1 to commercial neighborhood. Specifically, there's a 70-foot wide swath of land totaling 1.15 acres on the east side of the parcel that is zoned ASC1 that we are seeking to rezone to CN. Development Services staff found this request to be approvable, and Planning Commission staff found the request to be consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, highlighting some of their findings. The size and depth of the subject parcel in relation to the other adjacent commercial uses would create a zoning development pattern that is consistent with the existing zoning and development pattern of the commercial uses in the area. The proposed rezoning reflects a development pattern that is consistent with the surrounding area. The subject property meets the commercial locational criteria requirements for properties in the Res 4 future land use category. And overall, the proposed rezoning would allow for development that is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. FDOT staff reviewed this property for proposed retail development, including access to State Road 574, and staff approved the concept subject to review and approval by an official permit application. We provided public notice as required by the Land Development Code and were not contacted by any citizens regarding this request. With that, I respectfully request your recommendation of approval, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Just one quick question, Mr. Wright. I just wanted to verify the property is identified as being zoned ASC1 and CN for a total of 5.59 acres. Can you just verify for me what the acreage amount is for that ASC1?
Yes, 1.15.
1.15
And that's depicted on the zoning plot plan in the record.
All right. Perfect. That answers my only question. Thank you so much. Development Services.
Isis Brown, Development Services, application 23-0100. The request is to rezone from an existing 5.59 acres, which has a split zoning of 1.15 acres of ASC 1 zoning and 4.41 of CN to a proposed CN zoning district. The surrounding properties are zoned as follows: ASC to the north and east, RSC, CN, and CG to the west, and Dr. MLK Jr. Boulevard and ASC to the south. The site is located in an area which comprises of a mixture of uses, including agricultural uses, single-family residential, and commercial general uses, and commercial neighborhood uses. The surrounding area is consistent with and located within the Res 4 future land use category. The site is located in a rural service area and is outside of Hillsborough County's urban service area. However, an 8-inch water main exists approximately 70 feet from the subject property and is located west of the subject property within the west right-of-way of Railroad Street. Additionally, a 3-inch wastewater low-pressure force main is adjacent to the located site in the east right-of-way of Railroad Street. Based on the above consideration, staff finds that the proposed CN zoning district is compatible with the existing district and development pattern of the area, and staff finds the request approvable.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Planning Commission.
Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the Residential 4 future land use category. It is in the rural area, and the subject property is not located within the limits of a community plan. The Residential 4 future land use category designates areas that are suitable for low-density residential development. The future land use element permits new development within the rural area that is similar to the character of the existing community. Objective 4 of the future land use element notes that 20% of the growth in the region will occur within the rural area without the threat of urban or suburban encroachment. Policy 4.1 characterizes the rural area as low-density, large lot residential. The subject site is within the rural area, and the proposed rezoning of the parcel from ASC 1 and CN to CN is similar in character to the surrounding area. Future land use element objective 16 emphasizes the need for new developments to preserve, protect, and enhance existing neighborhoods. Policy 16.1 restricts incompatible land uses through mechanisms such as locational criteria for non-residential uses and limiting development in residential land use categories to neighborhood scale. Policy 16.5 touches upon the restriction of higher intensity non-residential land uses adjacent to established neighborhoods, to collectors and arterials, and to locations that are external to established and developing neighborhoods. The subject site is situated directly on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, which is an arterial roadway. The proposed rezoning reflects a development pattern that is consistent with the surrounding area and is consistent with this policy direction. The subject site also meets commercial locational criteria as is located within 900 feet of the nearest qualifying intersection node of Sydney Dover Road and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Maximum square footage on the site is limited to a 0.25 FAR or 120,000 square feet, whichever is less. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak in support? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to this request? No one? Development Services?
Nothing further.
All right. Mr. Wright, anything before we close?
Nothing further. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll close rezoning 23-0100 and go to the next case.
The next case is item C7, standard rezoning 23-0149. The applicant is requesting to rezone property from ASC 1 to RSC 2. Isis Brown will provide staff findings after a presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Finch. Todd Amadon, 8515 Palm River Road in Tampa. This is probably the simplest application you'll ever review. This is simply filed to correct a non-conforming lot to rezone 0.9 acres from ASC1 to RC2. The staff report says it all. It's the existing non-conforming density is 1 unit, and the proposed conforming density is 1 unit. The property owners, John and Angie Nider, are here tonight if you have any questions for them as well. That's it.
No questions at this time. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
If you could please sign in. Development Services.
Isis Brown, Development Services, case 23-0149, as stated by the applicant. The request is to rezone the existing ASC 1 zoning district to the proposed RSC 2 zoning district. The RSC 2 district permits single-family conventional development on lots containing a minimum of 21,520 square feet, which is half an acre. And as he stated, that it's a nonconformity based on that. Okay, there we go, sorry. The site is located in an area comprising of single-family residential units. Adjacent properties are zoned RSC to the north and west, and ASC 1 to the east and south. The subject parcel is located within the Res 4 future land use category and permits low-density residential development. The site is located within the urban service area and would be required to connect, but is already connected to urban service area, sorry. Based on the above consideration, staff finds that the proposed RSC 2 zoning district is compatible with the existing zoning district of the development pattern in the area. Staff finds the request approvable. I'm available for questions.
No questions, but thank you for your testimony. Planning Commission.
Melissa Leinhardt, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the Residential 4 future land use category. It is in the urban service area, and the subject property is not located within the limits of a community plan. The Residential 4 future land use category is intended to designate areas that are suitable for low-density residential development. Typical uses include residential development and suburban-scale neighborhood commercial and office uses that are subject to commercial locational criteria. The subject site is surrounded by the Residential 4 future land use category in all directions. The proposed rezoning to RSC2 is compatible with the existing character of the area, and there is extensive RSC2 zoning to the west and further to the north and south of the subject site. The zoning pattern is consistent with the urban service area policy direction and policy 1.4 of the future land use element with regard to compatibility. The proposed rezoning meets the intent of the neighborhood protection policies of the future land use element, Objective 16, and its accompanying policies. The development pattern of the surrounding area shows several other single-family and residential uses along Pearson Road, Crestwood Drive, and Barkley Lane. A rezoning to RSC2 would reflect a development pattern that is aligned with the existing development pattern and consistent with policy direction. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Is there anyone that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to this request? No one. Ms. Heinrich, anything else?
No further comments, thank you.
Mr. Amadin?
In opposition.
I'm sorry?
I would like to speak in opposition.
Oh, okay. Well,
Go ahead.
come forward. Give us your name and address, please.
David Webb. My address is 3903 Crestwood Drive, Valrico, Florida, 33596. Let me make sure that I'm getting this correct. He wants to split the property into 2 parcels?
No, no, sir. This is for a piece of property that's 0.8 acres in size, and they're rezoning it for 1 home. They're
Just for
rezoning
1
it-
home on the
Yes,
on the lot?
That's correct,
Okay,
because-
then I'm not, yeah, we're not in opposition of that.
All right.
So it was my understanding that some of the neighbors thought that he wanted to split it into 2 parcels,
Well, I don't believe.
because it's not even a conforming lot right now.
That's correct.
And no one's in objection to building a house on it. They just didn't want 2 houses on it.
You know what, we'll ask Mr. Amadin to come back up, but it's my understanding that they
Oh,
can only
okay.
achieve 1 home on here. Oh, sir, if you could sign in with the clerk's office. Mr. Ammon, if you could
For the
answer
record, Todd Ammon, that is confirmed. It's a non-conforming lot. They're not looking to split the lot into two. The RSC2 zoning will only allow one lot.
one home. That's
And the
it.
only, thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, thank you. With that, Mr. Ammon, you didn't have any further comments before I close?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Then with that, we'll close rezoning 23-0149 and go to the next case.
Our next case then would be item D1, Major Mod 22-1116. The applicant is requesting a major modification to PD 130939. Sam Ball will present staff findings after presentation by the applicant.
All right, Mr. Wright, I understand you are the applicant, correct?
Yes, again, David Wright, for the record. Address is P.O. Box 273-417, Tampa, Florida 33688. This is a request for a major modification to an approved plan development. The PD was originally approved in 2014 to allow the property located at southwest corner of Beverly Boulevard and Greenwell Drive to be used for an indoor-outdoor recreation facility, including a 322-child daycare. We're seeking to add a second development option that would allow a 150-student K-12 school for exceptional needs students in lieu of the daycare. The application includes a request for a PD variation to LDC Section 6.05.02E to reduce the number of required off-street parking spaces, and a waiver to LDC Section 2.11.88A requiring school sites to have direct access to a roadway shown on the current MPO long-range transportation cost affordable plan. Both of those requests are detailed in the application package, and staff found them to be supportable based on the justifications presented in the requests. The site is located on the west side of Beverly Boulevard and currently utilizes 3 access points to Beverly. This request proposes to reduce the number of access points to Beverly Boulevard to 2 locations, as depicted on the site plan. The proposed site improvements include paving a new drive aisle from the proposed southern access point to the existing parking area, and restriping the existing parking area to provide school parking and to implement the traffic circulation and queuing plan for school drop-off and pickup. The exceptional needs students will be prohibited from driving to school and will not be allocated parking. As Beverly Boulevard is a substandard local roadway, a design exception request for Beverly Boulevard was submitted to determine the specific improvements that would be required by the county engineer. Based on factors presented in the design exception request, the county engineer found the design exception request approvable. The deviations from the Hillsborough County Transportation Technical Manual TS7 are detailed in the transportation staff report, and the required improvements to Beverly are covered in the proposed condition of approval 7C. Development Services staff found this request to be approvable, and Planning Commission staff found the request to be consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. We provided public notice as required by the Land Development Code. We were not contacted by any citizens objecting to this request. We also held a neighborhood meeting the evening of Wednesday, September 7th, 2022. Invitations were mailed to the same property owners as the public notice. 15 citizens attended the meeting seeking information about the request, and none of them expressed objections, and most of them expressed their support. With that, I respectfully request your recommendation of approval of this major modification to the PD, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick question regarding the proposed 30 parking spaces that would go with the school. I read the comments from county staff, and we could get to them in the next segment, but I wondered if you could help me with how those 30 parking spaces were derived. Where does that number come from?
Yes, if you look to the variation for site design forms, it includes a list of different types of schools and their parking requirements. Looking at all of those types of schools, we felt that this most closely matched what a school for the blind would be, and so we took that parking ratio and it basically just covers the parking that would be required for the staff. And that's all detailed in the variation.
That was my question, whether that reflected the staff for the proposed school. And the 78 spaces that are associated with the recreational facility, those are existing, correct?
Yes, they are.
All right, that was my only question for you. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Development
The
services.
only additional,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
the only additional parking would be some grass parking along the new drive aisle, and that's for special events. But all of the required parking is already on site once we restripe the parking lot.
All right, thank you for that, I appreciate it. Development services. Good evening.
Good evening, Sam Ball, Development Services. Plan development PD 130939 was approved in 2014 to allow the property located at the southwest corner of Beverly Boulevard and Greenwell Drive to be used for an indoor-outdoor recreational facility, a child care center, and a voluntary pre-kindergarten program. The applicant is requesting a major modification to the PD to add a second development option, which would allow for the 150-student special needs school for students K through 12 in lieu of the 322 children child care use. The subject property is located within the Brandon Community Plan area, approximately 1/3 of a mile south of the East Brandon Boulevard and Beverly Boulevard intersection. The abutting properties are zoned RSC6, RMC12, and are developed for multifamily, single-family, residential, and agricultural uses. These property to the north of Greenwell Drive is single-family and zoned RSC6. The adjoining property to the south is RSC6 and is used for pasture, cattle, horse, sheep, or goats, or other farm animal use. The Beverly Drive right-of-way to the east separates the property from a multifamily development, and that's zoned RMC12. Properties to the west are developed for single family, and a vacant property that's owned by Hillsborough County, and all those properties are zoned RSC6. Major modification 221116 application includes PD variation request from section 6050T2E to allow for a reduction in the number of spaces that would result in the 30 spaces. The highest number of spaces that could be required for the school would be if school enrollment were solely made up of students 9 through 12, and that number would be 70 spaces. To support the request for the reduction in number of spaces, the school will be restricted to special needs students, and students will not be allowed to drive to school. The application also includes a waiver request for relief from section 61188, a requirement for the, with the exception of elementary schools, school sites shall have direct access to a roadway shown on the current MPO long-range transportation cost affordable plan. If major modification 221116 is approved, the county engineer will approve a design exception for the Beverly Boulevard's substantial roadway improvements. If 221116 is approved, the maximum floor area would still be restricted to 33,000 square feet and result in a 0.05 floor area ratio. Buildings would be restricted to 35 feet in height with 25-foot front setbacks, 20-foot minimum side yard setback, and impervious surface area would be limited to 40%. Based on the surrounding zoning, development pattern, proposed uses, development standards, and the conditions of approval, zoning staff finds the request approvable.
Two quick questions, if that completes your presentation.
Yes, it does.
All right, the first one, just minor. There is no proposed zoning condition 8. It goes 7 to 9, just to let you know that. And when I was looking at zoning condition 7, and that would be 7E, where it talks about the annual requirement for the school to submit a traffic monitoring and to assess the queuing up to a certain point after the school reaches its maximum capacity. My question is, from the county's perspective, how is that monitored? How is that ensured that that analysis is actually done and submitted?
That would be handled by our transportation department. They're the ones that basically are requesting that requirement. So they would have to report to transportation.
And so somebody, and Ms. Heinrich, maybe you can help me with, how does that actually get done, that someone pays attention to this after this is all said and approved, perhaps?
Yeah, correct. If transportation staff should be able to join us virtually if they're hearing this to be able to answer that question.
Mr. Ratliff, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Yes, for the record, James Ratliff, Development Services, Transportation Review Section. So, as you know, zoning conditions are typically the primary place that they're enforced is at site construction plan approval. After that point, we don't have a formal process where we, require projects to come back through the site construction plan review stage. So, ultimately, compliance is the responsibility of the individual property owner, we would of course react under a. It could become a code enforcement issue if they did not comply, then they would be in violation of their PD zoning conditions. And so it would be handled through that code enforcement process. But those are the only really two ways that we see something when it comes in through the site construction plan review. And then the only time we might see it again is if, under that other secondary kind of scenario.
All right, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
We'll go to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. For the record, Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the residential 6 future land use category. It is in the urban service area and also located within the limits of the Brandon Community Plan. The residential 6 future land use category surrounds the subject site on all sides. Further north of the site is the office commercial 20 future land use category, and further southwest of the site is the residential 9 future land use category. Future land use element objective 17 and policy 17.1 permit the development of residential support uses such as schools and daycares in all residential future land use categories subject to compatibility. The subject site is located in the residential 6 future land use category, and the proposed use may be considered. Residential support uses are not subject to commercial locational criteria. The proposal meets the intent of future land use element objective 16 and its accompanying policies, which require that new development, infill, and redevelopment be compatible to the surrounding area and character. Goal 12 and objective 12-1 of the community design component in the future land use element require new developments to recognize the existing community and be designed to relate to and be compatible with the predominant character of the surrounding area. In this case, the surrounding land use pattern is mostly low-density single-family residential, public and institutional uses, and multifamily. The proposed residential support uses will complement the surrounding area. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed modification consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Is there anyone that would like to speak in support? All right, no one? Yes, sir. In support, yes? All right, give us your name and address, please.
My name is Chris Pello. I live at 10422 Cardera Drive in Riverview, Florida. I am the CEO and founder of the proposed school looking to move in. And I just wanted to let you all know that these are very special children with Down syndrome, intellectual disabilities. These students need as much support as they possibly can. And we provide an environment where they can grow and really get the support that they need. None of these students drive at all, and they will not drive. And so I just wanted to let you know that it is specifically for students with special needs. And the impact we feel is going to be a lot less than the approved 325 student daycare that's already approved for. So we're really looking at about half the impact that's currently there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. If you could please sign in. Anyone else to speak in support? Seeing no one, anyone to testify in opposition? Good evening.
Evening. I'm kind of new at this. I live at, my name is Jeff Symmes. I live at 908 Greenwell Drive. I live directly across from the pool. It's not the handicapped kids that I'm here. It's not the modular building. We're all for that. It's the traffic that is associated with this coming down Greenwell Drive all the time. Because, I mean, we've got to be on pins and needles when we're backing out of the driveway. Wednesday mornings, I have a huge chlorine truck parking in my, well, not in my front yard, but right across the street from my driveway that I have to deal with. There has been pool construction. They just got finished filling up the small practice pool again. They had to rework it again after being built. They just got finished remodeling the Olympic-sized pool. So now it's been drained again. In that process, they brought out 3 gasoline pumps at 9 o'clock at night and cranked them up. I said, come on now, you know? And like I said, it's not the modular building for the handicapped kids, because they walk up and down, they go, there's a building down off Hillside that they utilize. They walk in front of the house. That's okay. We don't have a problem with it. But it's the traffic. We have school buses speeding down Greenwell. We have the smaller buses speeding down Greenwell. We have people, because Greenwell doesn't have any speed bumps. So they dodge Hillside and they speed down Greenwell. And that's what our complaint is. That's what we're trying to keep from happening. And, that to me is a problem, because there again, that's where the handicapped kids walk. They're supposed to put in a sidewalk the length of Greenwell down to Glendale. That's what Burgess told me that the county required. And, then when they build the additional parking, so that's going to create more traffic. And that's what my concern is. Because, I was born and raised in that area. I've seen the development of the pool. I've seen everything change. And that's all I wanted to say about that.
All right, thank you for coming down in your
Thank you,
comments.
ma'am.
If you could please sign in. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? All right, seeing no one. Ms. Heinrich, anything else?
Yes, please. 2 items. The first one, you had mentioned in reviewing the conditions of approval about number 8.
Yes.
And I found that was just a spacing error. It is in there at the end of that subsection.
Let me get there.
J, 7J.
I do see. Oh, yes, you're correct. Okay, it is a spacing issue. Okay, solved. All right.
And also, before we move on, transportation staff has a few other comments to add to the record, please.
All right. Mr. Ratliff.
Yes, hi, good evening. James Ratliff, Transportation Review Section. I did want to clarify that the summary form that I filed that was at the very end of my staff report, the transportation comment sheet, it does state that the project trip generation, it provides numbers for existing and proposed, and it says that it will result in a decrease of project traffic. I did just want to clarify, the developer is maintaining the existing development option for the daycare as a development option A, and so actually this proposed zoning will result in no change in the maximum trip generation potential of the subject site. Now, should they choose this new option B that they're adding, new option B does significantly decrease the amount of impacts to the project. And so just wanted to, it's maybe parsing words a little, a little nuanced, but I wanted to make sure it was clear that this proposed change is not decreasing the trips to the project. It will, if they choose option B, ultimately result in a decrease in traffic. But ultimately, this is kind of a status quo change, essentially because they still could develop the option which has daycare uses, and so it would result in no change to the maximum trip generation potential of the subject site.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Ratliff, can you comment on the gentleman's question about the sidewalk that would be required?
Sure. So the developer, so the project is going to be required to provide sidewalks along its project frontage to the extent that those are not already there, and that would be the extent of their requirement, as the Land Development Code requires developers to construct sidewalks from boundary to boundary along all of their roadway frontages. So it would be both along their northern property boundary frontage as well as along the, their eastern boundary.
And if you could, just for the record, give us the information as to when that would be required to be installed.
That would be when they come in for, through the site plan approval process to construct the new use component. We would be reviewing to ensure sidewalks are put in at that time along with all other relevant development standards.
All right, perfect. Thank you for those comments. I appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, did we leave off? We left off with county staff. Ms. Heinrich, did you have anything else?
Nothing further, thank you.
All right, thank you. Then we'll go back to Mr. Wright. You have 5 minutes for rebuttal. I'd like to address any of the issues.
Thank you. Again, David Wright for the record. Appreciate Mr. Ratliff clarifying the trip numbers. And I want to commit that if this is approved, they have every intention of utilizing the site for development option 2 and proceeding with the school. I advised them to try to keep the daycare as an option because I just didn't want them to give up any entitlements that they currently have. But every intention is to use this for the school option. As for Greenwell Drive, there currently does not exist a sidewalk on the south side of Greenwell, and we will be required to put that sidewalk in. I recall speaking with the gentleman at the neighborhood meeting, and he did raise the issue of the pool supply deliveries interfering with being right across the street from his home and blocking him from backing out of his driveway. And I know that Chuck Burgess, the director of the facility, offered to meet with him and will continue to do whatever he needs to make sure that that's not inconveniencing him anymore. Also, the sidewalk being constructed on the south side of Greenwell would prevent people from parking there in the future. And right now it's just a shoulder and they have free access to park. I think that's it. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll close Major Modification 22-1116 and go to the next case.
Our next case is item D3, Major Mod 22-1236. The applicant is requesting a major modification to PD 03-0119. Tim Lincoln with Development Services will provide comments after applicant's presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mrs. Finch. Clayton Bricklemeyer with Hillward Henderson, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, representing the applicant. A little bit similar to the previous case, we're adding a development option to a previously approved PD. There's a small parcel that's currently approved for a daycare and some other sort of residential support uses. We are adding a development, or requesting to add a development option that would allow us to put 16 townhomes. Those townhomes would be similar to the rest of the PD down to the 100th on density. This would be, and along the lines of what we were discussing before, should we choose this option, that would be a reduction in traffic. And again, it's identical in the density. I don't want to take up time when Tim's going to come read his report, but we have the traffic engineer here, the civil engineers online, property owners online. If you have any questions, and otherwise, I would ask for your recommendation.
Yeah, no questions at this time, but thank you so much. Development Services. Good evening.
Good evening, Tim Lampkin, Development Services. The property associated with this request is Community Mixed Use 12. As the applicant stated, they're proposing a major modification to the existing plan development, that's PD 03-0119, that's approved for 302 townhomes on Parcel A, which is not a subject of this request, and an office/retail establishment or daycare on the remaining 1.54 acre area designated as Parcel B that is subject to this request. So Parcel B has two development options. The first one is existing option 1. The applicant proposes no changes to the existing entitlements, which shall be considered option 1. The new proposed option 2, the applicant proposes to allow the Parcel B to be developed with up to 16 townhomes. The subject site is located at Ashburn Lake Drive and Falkenberg Road North. It's approximately 640 feet south of the intersection of Elliott Street East and Falkenberg Road North. The approximately 1.54 acre property is located approximately 1,150 feet north of 6 Mile Creek Road and Bryan Road. The site is currently undeveloped. The surrounding development pattern consists of a mixture of uses, including single-family residential uses on the north and south sides. Immediately west is a townhome development, which is also located in PD 03-00119. There are some light commercial uses closer to Falkenberg Road. Mobile home parks are also located to the north, and multifamily developments are located to the east. If you head up further north or further south, there is commercial. Pursuant to Land Development Code, Section 6.06.06, a 5-foot landscape buffer with Type A screening is required on the northern and southern boundaries of the Parcel B. The applicant's proposal exceeds this requirement and proposes a 10-foot wide buffer with Type A screening to further ensure compatibility with the existing adjacent development along the north and south property boundaries developed with single-family homes and the proposed 16 townhomes for Parcel B. The applicant requests no variations for site design. The application does not request any variations to the Land Development Code, Part 6.06.00, landscaping and buffering. The site will comply with and conform with all the other applicable policies and regulations, including but not limited to the Land Development Code, site development, and technical manuals. Staff has not identified any compatibility issues related to the surrounding property. The Planning Commission found it was consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan and the East Lake Orient Park Community Plan. There is a transportation design exception for North Falkenberg Road is a substandard road, and the applicant's engineer of record submitted a design exception for North Falkenberg to determine the specific improvements for the county engineer to review. Based on the factors presented in the design exception request, the county engineer found the design exception approvable. And then there's the North Falkenberg turn lane as the existing 180-foot turn lane serving the project access on North Falkenberg Road. It does not meet the 285-foot minimum turn length, and the county engineer also found that design exception approvable. Based upon the above, staff finds the request approvable. And that concludes my presentation, unless there are any questions.
Just a couple quick questions. I have a new staff report that was provided to me in the hearing, and I just wondered what the change was.
The change was the transportation report, which is located in the backup materials, but we PDF the DSD zoning report, and the transportation report just wasn't PDF'd with the DSD zoning report.
So it hasn't changed, it's just included in this backup?
Correct.
Okay, and then two very small things. One is in your description of on the front of your staff report, the description of the existing approval and the proposed modification, it lists the existing entitlements to include retail. And so I didn't see that in the zoning conditions, and I just wanted to confirm. Does that included in the professional services and the child care?
So that's exactly, so under professional services, the definition in Article 11, I think someone just said 12.
I won't hold you to
Thank
it.
you. It's a part of the definition of professional services as retail would be included.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to make sure I understood. And then the only other thing, very small, is in 7.1 and 7.2. It talks about PD with this application 221236. It just needs to be changed to major modification, so it's clear that it doesn't change the originating number. That was it.
Okay,
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Planning Commission.
Thank you. The subject property is located in the Community Mixed Use 12 Future Land Use category. It is in the urban service area, and the subject property is located within the limits of the East Lake Orient Park Community Plan. The intent of the CMU 12 Future Land Use category is to be urban in intensity and density of uses. Typical uses in this category include residential, commercial, office, research, corporate park uses, light industrial, and mixed-use projects at appropriate locations. CMU 12 surrounds the subject site to the north, west, and south, and urban mixed-use 20 is located to the east of the subject site. The proposed rezoning meets the intent of Objective 16 of the future land use element and its accompanying policies regarding compatibility, complementary uses, and the need to protect existing neighborhoods and communities, as well as those that will emerge in the future. Objective 12-1 and Policy 12-1.4 of the Community Design Component discuss how new development should be compatible with the established character of the surrounding area. Objective 17-1 and Policy 17.1-4 seek to facilitate patterns of development that are organized and purposeful. The property is not subject to commercial locational criteria pursuant to Future Land Use Element Policy 22.2, as the property is located in a mixed-use future land use category. The subject site is within the East Lake Orient Park Community Plan, which encourages the development of housing for all income levels. Moreover, the subject site is located in an area that is noted in the community plan for its redevelopment potential. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed modification consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Anybody that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor of this application? Seeing no one. Anyone in opposition to this request? Either in the room or online? Seeing no one. Ms. Heinrich, anything else? Development Services? Anything you'd like to add?
Thank you. What we're looking up right now, which we can have confirmed by the staff planner, we don't believe retail is an existing permitted use.
Okay. All right. So we possibly would change that staff report to delete that reference?
It's not in the conditions. Retail is not referenced in the existing conditions.
Correct. That's why I asked the question. I didn't see
Right.
it, and it was just in the narrative of the staff report, so.
Okay, let us just check for a moment. Tim is saying that there is a mention of it in the staff plan.
Okay.
Or site plan, sorry, we'll take a look.
All right.
For what it's worth, we don't care if we get retail.
No, I understand. Thank you for that.
Thank you for your patience.
Sure.
When we, Michelle Heinrich, Development Services, Tim pointed out that parcel B, the existing site plan, does say commercial. However, the conditions only allow professional office and childcare. So that's what would regulate uses on that parcel.
Whichever is more restricted.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. All right, Mr. Brickemeyer, you have time for rebuttal.
That was it? No rebuttal? We're happy with the way the conditions are.
All right, thank you for your
Thanks.
testimony. With that, we'll close major modification 22-1236 and go to the next case.
Our next item is D4, Major Mod 22-1392. The applicant is requesting a major modification to PD 06-0103. Tim Lincoln will present staff findings after the applicant provides his presentation. Thank you.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening. Already open. There we go. All right, thank you. Good evening. My name's Dallas Evans. I'm a licensed professional engineer and certified planner with Landis Evans and Partners. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Florida Home Partnership, formerly known as Homes for Hillsborough. My address is 3810 Northdale Boulevard in Tampa, and I've been sworn. The subject property is located on the northeast corner of 12th Street and Bell Street in Waimama, and the property is currently vacant. Adjacent uses include apartments to the north and northwest, a small commercial office directly across 12th Street to the west, single-family detached and mobile homes to the southwest, south, and east, and a cemetery to the southeast. There's a wetland to the north of the property which receives stormwater runoff from the site. The property is within the R6 future land use category, as are all of the surrounding properties. The apartment complex to the north and west is a planned development, as is the cemetery to the southeast. Zoning of the adjacent single-family residential properties include RSC 6, RSC 3, RSC 2, and AS1. This property was originally zoned as a planned development with PD 06-0103, which allowed for the construction of 40 multifamily apartment units on the property. This development would have consisted of a pond along the north side of the property and a ring of multifamily structures around a central drive. The PD was revised in 2007 via PRS 070733 to allow for 30 single-family detached homes on 50-foot lots. Major Mod 21-1108 again revised the PD to allow for 38 villa lots. 2 variances for substandard roadway and driveway connection spacing were also approved with this modification. The current request is to allow triplex and townhome units, triplex and quadruplex units, in addition to the duplex units allowed with Major Mod 21-1108. This project will be an affordable housing development serving low to very low income individuals. LDC 6-1107 states that affordable housing developments may use single-family detached, single-family zero lot line, duplex, triplex, quadruplex, atrium, townhouse, or multifamily units. However, the previous PD had specifically referenced duplex units as the proposed product type, necessitating a zoning modification to allow alternative product types for the desired mix of duplex, triplex, and quadruplex. The proposed general development plan is largely unchanged from the previous approval. One notable exception is that we have modified the roadway layout and shifted lots to avoid impact to a wetland at the southeast corner of the property that was previously proposed for removal, and also, was not delineated at that time. We've also bifurcated the proposed stormwater pond to avoid impacts to a small wetland along the northern property line. The proposed development will consist of 38 duplex, triplex, or quadruplex units on individual lots with minimum dimensions of 20 feet by 100 feet and a minimum lot area of 2,000 square feet. We're requesting flexibility in the location and numeric breakdown of various product types. The project will have a single access onto 12th Street. The project's located in the utility service area. Water and sewer service will be provided by Hillsborough County. This project requires 2 administrative variances. The first has already been approved with the previous major modification for connection spacing. That is unchanged with this request, as is the majority of the roadway layout. The second is for substandard roadway. We're proposing to dedicate right-of-way and provide sidewalk across the project's frontage. There's already an existing sidewalk on the opposite side of 12th Street. However, the right-of-way width on that side of the roadway will remain substandard, requiring the variance. This had been approved with Major Mod 21-1108 as well. However, the substandard roadway review procedure has changed since the adoption of the Wimauma Downtown Overlay District. This required re-review of the request. The county engineer has found both of these to be approvable. A copy of that email is included in the staff report. As referenced previously, this property lies within the Wimauma Downtown Overlay District. While the previously approved villas are not regulated by these standards, the proposed triplex and quadruplex units are, and would most closely match the row house lot type included in those standards. We're requesting several variations from the row house lot type to accommodate the proposed development. The overlay specifies its lot sizes ranging from 1,800 square feet to 3,840 square feet. We're requesting to be allowed to provide up to 4,500 square foot lots to accommodate larger corner lots. The spacing along the roadway is such that an additional lot can't be created, so that leaves us with some additional space. We're asking to add that to the corner lots. The overlay also specifies a minimum lot frontage of 90%. We're requesting a lower lot frontage to allow for greater spacing between the buildings that's required to meet fire separation. And the overlay also specifies a maximum front yard of 15 feet and for garages to be provided to the rear of the dwelling. This site is fairly small and irregularly shaped. We're not able to provide alleys behind the units, so we're asking to be allowed to do front-loaded garages with driveways. To summarize some of the key findings from the staff report, this application will not alter the currently allowed density on the property. It will remain 38 residential dwelling units. This is under the maximum allowable density under the comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission has found the proposed development to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Staff has found the request approvable. Administrative variances have been deemed approvable by the county engineer, and there are no objections from any of the reviewing agencies. With that, I'll conclude the presentation and respectfully request your approval.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. If you could help me with, in your presentation and in the staff report, as well as the proposed conditions, the term townhomes and quads were used interchangeably. You mention a quad, but the proposed zoning conditions don't mention a quad at all. It has a townhome. So could you help me with what the difference in that housing type is? Because it does say triplexes and duplexes, but the proposed conditions don't talk about quadruplexes at all.
Quadruplex should fall under the townhome use. Townhomes doesn't distinguish how many units in a row you would have. Quadruplex is actually more restrictive in that you would have specifically 4 units. So townhome should cover the desired quadruplex as well.
All right, understanding that no more than 38 units total, regardless of how they're grouped.
Correct.
All right, thank you for that. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office.
Absolutely.
Development Services.
Good evening, Tim Lampkin, Development Services. The property associated with this request has a future land use designation of residential 9. Major modification 21-1108 was approved as a major modification to substitute detached single-family homes for duplexes and increasing the density from 30 to 38 dwelling units, what we have today. The applicant is seeking a major modification to the existing plan development PD 06-0103, modified by 21-1108. This modification to the PD includes one 7.2 acre parcel. The proposed development substitutes the 38 single-family duplexes, which was what was approved before, for 38 single-family dwellings consisting of a combination of duplex, 3-unit triplex, and 4-unit quadplex buildings. And I will note that in the Waimala regulations, they all would fall under the purview of what's called a row house lot. That's their commonality. That's the overarching term for all 3 of those types. The subject site is located on the northwest corner of the North Street and 12th Street intersection, approximately 2,000 feet northeast of the intersection of Westlake Drive and State Road 674. The immediate surrounding area of the subject property is predominantly residential, including multifamily mobile homes and detached single-family residential. The applicant proposes a 5-foot type A landscaping buffer adjacent to the eastern and southern boundaries. And while not required, they're also proposing a 5-foot buffer with type A landscaping on the north side of the PD boundary. The applicant does not request any variations, to the Land Development Code, Part 6.06.00, landscaping and buffering. Due to the wetlands on the site, the applicant proposes a condition to allow the existing vegetation in lieu of required screening pursuant to Land Development Code Section 6.06.06.C.12, which permits an applicant to submit an alternative screening plan at the time of site and development. Major modification, this is kind of like a little history, major modification 21-1108 was submitted approximately 5 months prior to the adoption of the new Waimama Downtown Overlay District. Therefore, it was subject to the previous regulations that did not include additional guidelines for the downtown area. The property is located within the Waimama Community Plan Downtown Area, Area B, Downtown Center Area B, and is located in the Urban Service Area. The requested change is primarily to allow a conversion of some of the lot types, again, from the duplex to the villa triplex and quadplex, and keeping some of the duplexes. The proposed modification is required to comply with the newly adopted Section 3.23.00 Waimama Downtown Overlay District. The applicant requests variations for the proposed development, variations of LDC Part 3.23.06, Waimama Downtown Overlay Standards. The first variation is for section 3.23.06.b, which is table 5-2, which is regarding a minimum lot size of 1,800 square feet and a maximum lot size of 3,840 square feet. The applicant's requesting a variation to allow a larger lot size up to 4,500 square feet. Variation 2 is also a variation to section 3.23.06.b, table 5.2, and it's regarding frontage of 90% to 100% maximum. The applicant requests a variation to allow for a reduced building frontage to allow for wider side yards on corner lots, as well as to provide a minimum 10-foot building separation. And then there's variations 3 and 4, which kind of are correlated, which they're both variations for section 3.23.06.b, table 5-2. The first one is regarding the front yard being at 0 minimum and 15-foot maximum, and the second one is that row house lots shall provide attached rear loading parking garages access via an alley or publicly accessible street. So they run tandem because the applicant's proposing to have the front loaded garage. The subject site will comply with conform to all other applicable regulations, including but not limited to the Land Development Code. The Planning Commission has found the proposal consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, and the applicant went into the transportation overview. There's an administrative variance for access spacing, and there's a second administrative variance for the substandard road, which is 12th Street, and the county engineer found both approvable. That concludes staff's presentation, unless there are any questions.
No, just a similar question you heard me ask about regarding the housing type in the zoning conditions regarding the terms quadruplex or townhome.
And that's a really good question. What I would suggest is replacing those with a row house lot, since that's found in table 5-2 of the Land Development Code for the Waimama Downtown District.
All right.
If the applicant's agreeable. And
Well, I just looked at the applicant's site plan, and the applicant on the site plan says the housing types are duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes, and doesn't use the term townhome at all. So I think we'll get there, but
okay.
or figure out what the proper term should be.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Planning Commission.
Thank you. The subject property is located in the residential 6 future land use category. The site is in the urban service area, and the subject property is located within the limits of the Waimama Village Community Plan and the South Shore Area-Wide Systems Plan. The subject property is surrounded by the residential 6 future land use category on all sides. Further north of the property is designated as Waimama Village Residential 2 or WVR2 on the future land use map. The proposal meets the intent of future land use element Objective 1 and Policy 1.2 by providing for growth in the urban service area. The proposed plan development meets the minimum density by providing 38 units, which is consistent with the density expected in the residential 6 category. There are development standards specifically addressed in the Land Development Code for the Downtown Center Waimama Village Community Plan. The applicant is requesting a variation from the standards for a larger lot size to reduce the building frontage, to provide 10 feet of building separation, to provide front loading garages, and larger front setbacks. Per the livable communities element, it is recognized that from time to time, compliance with regulations that implement the community plans may create unforeseen hardships for particular properties. Therefore, the comprehensive plan contemplates allowing a procedure for varying from regulations that implement the vision of the community plans. Planning Commission staff has no objection to the variations, as the request does not conflict with the vision of the Waimama Village Community Plan. In this case, the proposal is consistent with the general character of the surrounding area, which is residential in nature. The request is also consistent with the overall Waimama Village Community Plan. The subject site is specifically located in the downtown center district, which encourages a mix of housing types, including single-family attached and detached homes and multifamily units. The proposed rezoning is proposing triplex and quadplexes, which align with the typical housing envisioned for this area. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed major modification consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. All right, is there anyone in the room or online that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to this request? All right, no one? Ms. Heinrich, can you help us with this terminology?
Sure. Michelle Heinrich, Development Services. The first thing I wanted to point out is, for the record, the LDC Part 3.2306, those are waivers rather than PD variations, just so that you're aware of that, and it should just be flipped in the report.
Wait a minute, hang on one second.
Sure.
323, all of those are waivers, yes?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And in looking at the conditions of approval in the downtown Waimama overlay, they use the term row house, and that's a single-family attached product of 3 or more. So a triplex could count under that, quadplex could count under that. Duplex is its own, it's being permitted by the PD. But we did note that on the site plan, it shows all 4-unit townhomes. So we didn't know, and perhaps the applicant could, when he comes back up, could tell us which it is he'd prefer, so we could modify the conditions if necessary.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. All right, Mr. Evans, time for a rebuttal. If you could address the comment.
Yes, ma'am. I think I would prefer actually to stick with the triplex and quadruplex, just because it has been used for a longer period of time. I know the new overlay has come out with the row house terminology, but I think there might be less understanding both on the applicant side and on staff side during development review as to exactly what that means.
So just to be clear, so then it would be duplex, triplex, and quadruplex?
Yes,
or
ma'am.
quadplex, as I say. Okay. Thank you for that. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, nothing further.
All right. Then nothing further. We'll close major modification 1392. It's a little after 8, so we'll take a 5-minute break. There's a clock on the back wall. If you could be back by 8:10. Thank you.
These are the jobs you may not see every day, but just know we're working hard to make Hillsborough County a better place to live, work, and play. Subscribe to our YouTube page for more great county-related videos, only on HTV.
Tampa Bay is like no place else.
Wait, you can't recycle the bag? You have to throw it away.
Proper recycling keeps it that way for everyone. Bags tangle in machinery and can bring sorting efforts to a halt.
No bags.
Trash the bags and keep our recycling program moving forward.
No, Mom, look, no plastic bags.
Do your part to keep our recycling bag-free. Trash the tanglers or return them to participating retailers. For more information, visit tampabayrecycles.org.
All right, thank you so much. We're back to the zoning hearing master of April 17th, 2023. Ms. Heinrich, let's call the next case.
Sure. The next item is item D5, PD application 22-1401. Sam Ball with Development Services will present staff findings after the applicant's presentation.
All right, I understand the applicant is virtual.
Yes. Hello, my name is Ava Russo. I'm an EI working under the responsible charge of PE Michael Hoffman, and I will be representing Advanced Engineering as the applicant for this rezoning application. As the applicant, we are requesting to rezone the 6.12 acre property from agricultural single family to a planned development to allow for a gated single family subdivision with 5 homes having lot sizes ranging from 0.5 to 0.64 acres. The current AS1 zoning requires lot sizes that are a minimum of 1 acre. Therefore, we're requesting smaller lot sizes as well as reduced setbacks. The property will be for one extended family with relatives occupying each of the 5 homes. Being that a single-family home development is an allowable use within the AS1 zoning designation, we believe this request is consistent with the surrounding area. The proposed development is to be developed at a density of 0.8 dwelling units per acre and would include open space, recreational areas, and a private internal roadway. The requested setbacks include a front setback of 25 feet, rear of 25, and a side of 10. The proposed building height is 2 stories, up to 50 feet tall. The development is projected to generate 47 average annual daily trips with 9 total peak hour trips, and therefore qualifies for the county engineer's de minimis criteria. The property is identified as Lot C within the Tavallo Hills Unit 3 platted subdivision. The existing plat only allows for 3 additional lots, therefore the property will be undergoing a replat process to allow for the proposed 5 lots. An exemption to policies 1.2 and 1.3 of the future land use element have been requested to allow for 5 dwelling units on the property, which would achieve approximately 41% of the maximum density. The property includes 0.21 acres of freshwater and merchant wetlands, which require a 30-foot wetland setback. Per staff recommendations, prior to site plan certification, the site plan will be updated to show that 30-foot wetland setback, and all portions of the proposed fence that are within this setback will be removed. Aside from this recommendation, the staff and county commission have found this development approvable.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Development Services. Good evening.
Good evening. Sam Ball with Development Services. I just want to say for the record, a revised site plan has been submitted. The changes were for natural resource comments, to add requirements prior to certification, and to add 50 feet to the maximum building height.
I did see that. Thank you.
The applicant is requesting to rezone a 6.12 acre property from agricultural single family to planned development in order to allow the property to be developed into a gated family, single family subdivision with 5 homes, open space, recreational facilities, and a private roadway. The subject Parcel is located within the Brandon Community Plan area, approximately half a mile southwest of the Lithia Pinecrest Road and Adelaide Avenue intersection. The proposed planned development is located in an area developed for single-family residences where the majority of the homes are built on properties that are approximately 1 acre in size. The adjoining properties to the north, south, east, and west are zoned AS1, and all but 2 vacant properties are developed for single-family use. The subject property also adjoins a county-owned property along a portion of its western border. If Plan Development 221401 is approved, the subject property could be developed at a maximum density of 0.8 dwellings per acre on lots covering at least half an acre. The homes could be up to 2 stories tall with a maximum height of 50 feet. The minimum setbacks would be 25 feet from the front and rear, 10 feet from the sides. On-site amenities would include a gazebo, tennis courts, playground, and an enlarged existing pond. Based on the residential 2 future land use classification, the surrounding zoning and development pattern, the proposed uses and development standards for the planned development zoning district, staff finds this request approvable. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
No questions at this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Planning Commission.
Thank you. The subject property is located in the residential 2 future land use category. It is in the urban service area, and the subject property is located within the limits of the Brandon Community Plan. The residential 2 future land use category is intended to designate areas that are best suited for non-urban density residential development requiring a limited level of urban services. Typical uses of residential 2 include residential development and suburban scale neighborhood commercial and office uses that meet commercial locational criteria. The residential 2 future land use category surrounds the subject property on all sides. Public, quasi-public, future land use category is located further to the west of the subject site, and there are also residential 4 areas located further southwest and northwest. Future land use element policy 1.2 states that within the urban service area and in categories allowing 4 dwelling units per acre or greater, new development or redevelopment should occur at a density of at least 75% of the allowable density of the future land use category. The proposed development does not meet this policy direction. However, future land use element policy 1.3 allows properties to develop below the minimum density if they meet certain criteria. The subject property does meet the criteria for which development at a minimum density would adversely impact the existing development pattern within a 1,000-foot radius. The request is to allow for 5 dwelling units on the property, which would achieve approximately 41% of the maximum density permitted. Proposing additional dwelling units to meet minimum density could have an adverse impact on the existing Tavallo Hills subdivision, as well as undermine the Garden Estates Character District in the Brandon Community Plan. Goals 6 and strategies 3, 4, and 5 of the Brandon Community Plan require each of the character districts to follow a specific development pattern and be compatible with the surrounding area. The subject property is located within the Garden Estates District, where the predominant residential style primarily consists of dwellings on half-acre lots or more. The surrounding development pattern includes a predominant lot size of a half-acre or larger. The proposed site plan indicates a minimum lot size of half of an acre, which is compatible with the surrounding densities and is also compatible with the vision of the Garden Estates Character District of the Brandon Community Plan. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Is there anyone in the room or online that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to this request?
There is one individual online that was signed up in support.
Okay, in support.
Louis Fagan Marchand, can you hear me?
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I'm sorry. I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you for participating. I appreciate it. Now, just to be clear, there was no one in opposition. Last call, correct? All right. Seeing no one, we'll go back to Development Services. Ms. Heinrich, anything to add?
Yes, Michelle Heinrich, Development Services. We are going to update the staff report specifically on page 1 in the development standards table for the proposed lot size and lot width. That will be stated to say as per shown on the site plan. And the same will be done in the conditions of approval, either condition 2 or 3.
For the lot size and width. Is that what you
Correct.
said?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So we'll go back to the applicant. Ms. Russo, if you have anything to add, this is your time.
I do not. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. Then with that, we'll close rezoning 22-1401 and go to the next case.
The next case is item D6, Major Mod 22-1501. The applicant is requesting a major modification to PD 20-0308. Tanya Chapella with Hillsborough County Development Services will provide staff findings after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
I'm not sure how to pull this up. 1 second.
We have someone that can help you if you need it.
Okay, maybe. I plugged it in.
Control L to go large. Oh, sorry.
My name is Bryce Pinson with Half Associates. I'm here representing the applicant. And this is for a major modification to an existing PD. Oh, address is 1000 North Ashley Drive.
Thank you.
So the location of this is just south of East Telecom Parkway and west of Old Morris Bridge Road. It's about 6.91 acres and located within a university community plan area. The future land use is CMU 12 and zoning is PD 20-0308. The surrounding uses, to the north, it's bordered by Telecom Parkway, and across Telecom Parkway, there's single-family residential. To the east, there's about a 205-foot wide TECO easement. To the west, there is a City of Temple Terrace parcel with a stormwater pond, and then also a Verizon Data Services office. And to the south is wetlands. The current PD right now has Pod A and Pod B. Pod A is approved for 331 dwelling units. Pod B is currently approved for BPO, CG, and community residential home uses up to 33,000 square feet. The request is for Pod B, and it's to request 83,308 square feet if developed with mini warehouse uses, which is 0.5 FAR and what is currently allowed within CMU 12 future land use. And then also just to retain the existing entitlements if developed with BPO, CG, or community residential home uses.
Could I stop you? I apologize for interrupting your presentation, but this is exactly my question in that slide. So I just wanted to clarify because the conditions say the townhomes, the 33,000 square feet of CN and BPO, the community residential home, or the 83,308 mini warehouse. So it's, I just want to be clear for the record. So it is not both, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's only if it's developed with mini warehouse uses that we would get that square footage. Otherwise, if it's developed with the other uses, it would stay at 33,000.
Right. So 83,308 of mini warehouse would be the only use on that parcel?
Correct.
If that's the chosen use?
Correct.
Understood. Okay, I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. So Planning Commission found this consistent and compatible with the surrounding area and with the future land use category. Development Services also found it comparable to the current allowed uses. It results in a reduction of overall daily trips, and we had no objection from reviewing agencies. And that's all, but I'm here if you have any questions.
That was my only question. Thank you so much. If you could
Thank
please
you.
sign in with the clerk's office. Development Services.
And then do I?
Services. Before I start, I just found a typo in my report. It's page number 2. It is under the recommendation statement. It says approvable subject to conditions of approval, and then it says for the second development option and signature requests. So that part for the second development option and signature requests should not be there.
Okay, thank you for that.
The applicant is requesting to allow the entitlement increase for mini warehouse uses in Pot B only. The approved access serving non-commercial uses is also proposed to be shifted to the east and to add a cross-access bounding box. The request is limited to allow a maximum of 83,308 square feet if developed with mini warehouse uses while retaining the 33,000 square feet for the existing BPO, CG, and/or community residential home uses. They currently approved because the lot is vacant. No variations and no waivers were requested. The subject property is vacant. It has some single-family uses.
Is to serve phase 1 until the phase 2 access is constructed.
I think it's on the plan as it's the subset for phase 1. I don't know if I could put the PowerPoint back on, potentially. Yeah, thank you. Actually, I'm going to go to, we have a copy of the PD plan, but there's a subset on the bottom right where it says phase 1. That's to the north along frontage road is where the emergency access would be.
So the graphic on the right shows an access arrow.
Right.
And does that match the access arrow on the overall plan?
Yeah.
But that's only marked phase 1 access.
Right, that's a temporary emergency access which will go away when phase 2 is developed. So
Okay.
that's the intent of, yeah.
All right, let me just orient myself. So
Yeah,
if
so
you-
yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So phase 1, if that access is removed, then everything will be from the frontage road when phase 2 is
The
constructed?
Wiggins Road access will remain, which is the primary access to phase 1. The emergency access will be eliminated along with other curb cuts that are currently along the frontage road, and then there'll be another access point further to the east on frontage road to complete that circulation internal to the site.
For a total of how many access points when you're done?
One on Wiggins and then one on the frontage road, so two
Okay.
access points.
And not to beat this to death, but is the gated emergency access the same location as the access that will be the access to Wiggins Road in the same location?
The gated access, I'm sorry, yeah, the gated access is providing that interconnection east-west internally. So there's within phase 1 there's a primary access on the frontage road, then there's an emergency access on frontage road, and then there's a temporary gated access along or to the southeast corner of phase 1.
All right. I guess you're losing me with when you originally said the gated emergency access was to Wiggins, correct?
Right, yes. The gated emergency access you're right, it's in the southeast corner of the parcel.
The southeast.
Phase 1, yeah.
Okay.
Is that?
Maybe that's where
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it, because I'm only seeing the dark arrow, the primary access to Wiggins.
We can show. Yeah. Eli, do you want to?
Yeah, is there a way to pull this?
Can we pull this up just to?
It's coming.
Oh.
1 second, it's coming.
Thank you.
So this.
You want to introduce yourself?
Oh, name and
Eli
address,
Payne,
please.
Bayside Engineering, 2054 West Central Avenue,
Thank you.
St. Pete, 33712. Phase 1 here is this northwest parcel here. in
I
the
see.
corner. So right now there's an existing driveway that goes out to frontage road. And so in the temporary, there would be a gate and access here that would provide cross access for emergency vehicles to be able to exit on this
To
existing
go
driveway.
north.
Yep.
I see, okay.
And
All
then
right.
there's four existing driveways right now that will all be removed, that all serve the mobile home park. and just one new driveway will be put in at Phase 2.
Okay, so 2 total
Two total, yes.
when you're done?
Yep.
All right, perfect. I understand. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. As painful
Apologize for not being-
as it was. Okay. All right. Okay. Does that conclude your presentation?
Mr. Henry's going to just briefly present.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sir.
I'm all.
Good evening.
Good evening. Steve Henry, Links and Associates, 5023 West Laurel, Tampa 33607. As indicated, we did the traffic analysis for the project. The project has 2 access points, one to Wiggins, one to Frontage Road. Frontage Road is an FDOT roadway. We've actually had a pre-app with FDOT, and they're in agreement with the access to Frontage Road for the project. In addition, Wiggins Road is a substandard road, but we do have a design exception that has been deemed approvable by the county engineer. I'm happy to go through that if you'd like, but it is in the staff report with that would be deemed approvable. That concludes my presentation, unless you got any questions.
No, the access was it. Thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Don't forget to sign in. All right. Does that conclude the applicant's presentation? All right. Thank you. Then we'll go to Development Services.
Ms. Finch, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Michelle Heinrich, Development Services. Just to clear something up before we move forward, we need to know from the applicant if the mobile homes are either owned or rented.
Okay. Yeah, sir, you have to come. It is part of the process. We're recording this hearing, and it has to be on the mic. That's okay. And when you come back up, give us your name, please.
Jeff Anderson. I am the applicant. Address is 3811 South Frontage Road, Plant City, Florida, 33563. All the homes are owned by me, and the tenants rent them. They're on a month-to-month lease, and the intent is to move them to another property during the Phase 2 development.
That's fine for now, but we're checking on something, but his answer is fine for now.
No, I understand where you're going. Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Sure.
All right. So now we'll go to Development Services.
Good evening, Tim Lampkin, Hillsborough County Development Services for PD 22-1702. This property has an associated future land use designation of residential 4. The property is located on the south side of South Frontage Road and the east side of North Wiggins Road at the intersection of South Frontage Road and North Wiggins Road, approximately 50 feet south of Interstate 4 right-of-way. The subject site is located in the rural service area. The property is not located within a community planning area. The Plant City jurisdiction is located to the east and the west of the site. Surrounding uses include single-family residential and mobile homes to the south, and public institutional uses, including a church on the north side of Interstate 4. Light commercial uses, including a business park with a mixed-use warehouse, are located to the west, and Florida DOT-owned land is to the east. The subject property being bounded east and west by areas located within the jurisdiction of the City of Plant City. The applicant had discussions with the City of Plant City, and the conclusion was that annexation was not possible because it would create a landlocked property. The applicant seeks to develop an approximately 15.9 acre unified development consisting of 2 folios. The request is from Plan Development PD 93-0116 and PD 93-0115 to PD to allow, as the applicant stated, up to 80,000 square feet of commercial neighborhood and commercial general uses for the totality of Phase 1 and Phase 2. Possible uses proposed by the applicant include accessory retail, art supply, photography, catering, contractor's office without open storage, florist, locksmith, mini warehouses, office equipment, photography, printing, watch clock, jewelry repair, business services, and professional uses. Additional commercial uses are allowed if located a minimum of 80 feet from the perimeter boundary of the subject property. When abutting folio 90597.1256, this is the mobile home development that's located to the west and the south of Phase 1 and west of Phase 2. These uses include dry cleaner, small and large electric repair, exterminator, furniture repair, refinishing, upholstery, lawn care, landscaping, rental and leasing of light equipment, sign painting. The applicant's intent is to restrict these uses that would cause higher impacts to the surrounding residential area by concentrating them in the northern buildings along frontage road. The applicant does not request any variations to Land Development Code 6.06.00 landscaping and buffering. The applicant is required to have a 20-foot buffer with type B screening adjacent to the mobile home property located to the south and the west of the property as shown on the site plan. The applicant proposes a condition to use existing vegetation in lieu of required screening pursuant to LDC 6.06.06.C.12. This permits an applicant to submit an alternate screening plan at the time of site and development review. And this is for the applicant is proposing this alternate screening along the far south and east boundaries where there are extensive wetlands with existing riparian vegetation, creating a natural buffer and natural distance separation from the proposed development that will be located towards the northwestern area of the subject site. In addition to the required enhanced buffer and natural vegetation, the applicant realigned the buildings and proposes to have a minimum building setback, as they stated, of 60 feet where the proposed commercial development abuts the mobile home development to further mitigate impacts. The applicant also proposes a maximum building height of 25 feet to keep the development more in character with the nearby development. Another measure the applicant proposed to create further compatibility with the most southern residential is for the building setback to be 240 feet from the furthest southern boundary and with the proposed stormwater in this location, creating a natural type of buffer feature. The subject site will comply with and conform with all their applicable policies and regs, including but not limited to the Hillsborough Land Development Code. There is a transportation design exception. Wiggins Road is a substandard local road, and the applicant's engineer of record submitted a design exception request for Wiggins Road. And based on the factors presented in the design exception request, the county engineer found the design exception request approvable. The Planning Commission has found the request consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan, and staff finds it approvable, supportable, consistent. And that concludes my presentation, unless there are any questions.
No questions further.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Planning Commission.
Thank you. The subject property is located in the residential 4 future land use category. The site is in the rural area, and the subject property is not located within the limits of a community plan. The residential 4 future land use category is intended for low-density residential development. The subject site is surrounded by residential 1 to the north and to the south. The Plant City jurisdiction is located to the east and west of the site, and immediately southwest of the site is designated as residential 4. The property is subject to commercial locational criteria pursuant to Objective 22 of the future land use element. The nearest qualifying intersection is Frontage Road and Wiggins Road. The maximum building square footage permitted within 900 feet of a 2-lane roadway intersection is 120,000 square feet for the residential 4 future land use category. At least 75% of the property is in the intersection quadrant, and therefore the site does meet locational criteria. The proposed rezoning meets the intent of future land use element Objective 16 and its accompanying policies regarding compatibility, complementary uses, and the need to protect existing neighborhoods and communities, as well as those that will emerge in the future. The proposed rezoning provides for compatibility with the surrounding uses through mitigation techniques, through limiting the types of permitted uses, providing a minimum setback of 60 feet for buildings adjacent to single-family uses, and providing for a maximum building height of 25 feet. Additionally, the applicant proposes a stormwater pond in the southwest area of the property adjacent to single-family uses that will help further mitigate the proposed development. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Is there anyone in the room or online that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? No one. All right, Development Services. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, we have a little procedural issue regarding, there's a Florida statute, Chapter 723, that basically requires on certain qualifying mobile home parks that if it's a qualifying mobile home park, then there has to be a relocation study done. There's exceptions for that. The exception is which I believe, and again, my understanding is basically what the applicant purported to, the fact that if the mobile homes are not owned by the individual residents, they're just renting them and they don't own the spaces, that there's exemptions, they don't have to go through that study. The problem is that our development procedurals manual requires, in order to meet that exception, that a notarized affidavit be submitted verifying that exemption. So after discussions internally with the county attorney's office, I think, again, that requirement is for that notarized affidavit, which we obviously can't get that tonight because the record closes. So what we would suggest is, again, simply to allow for the submittal of that notarized affidavit attesting to compliance with that exemption to having to do that relocation study for the mobile home park, is that this item be continued to the May 15th ZHM exclusively, and only purpose would be to basically allow for the record to include that notice exemption. So we've already had the hearing, we've already taken testimony, there's no opposition testimony, so it'd be strictly to allow for that notarized affidavit to be submitted into the record, because that is a requirement of the procedural manual, and so it says you shall submit it, so it's something that needs to be done, and unfortunately his verbal commitment is not a notarized affidavit. Plus, I think it'd be prudent to just to verify what the exemption requirements are. Again, I know that what he's attested to is qualifies on the exemptions, but I think the procedure is for a notarized affidavit attesting to those, meeting those exemptions by the property owner, and that I think procedurally the notice affidavit would outline what those exemptions are.
All right, well, let's hear from the applicant, make sure you understand and that you are in agreement.
Yes. Well, no, I'm not in agreement. We are not registered as a 723 park. All of the mobile homes are designated as real property, so we fall under Florida Statute 83. So those designations do not apply.
And I'm not doubting that. Again, I guess the question is, because the requirements are for a notarized affidavit. So he's attesting on the record that he doesn't meet that. I think, you know, if he's objecting the continuance, then again, he can proceed forward under his own, I guess, going forward. But I think our concern is that, again, the requirements of the Development Review Procedural Manual is that there would be a notarized affidavit. He's attesting on the record that he says he's not complying with that, so that can be taken for what it's worth. But again, the requirements of the Development Review Procedures Manual are for a notarized affidavit.
So, and your point, and just so you understand, once we close this hearing, the record is closed, and you have no opportunity to submit anything past what you could have provided tonight. So the continuance provides you that opportunity to resolve this issue, good or bad, if you agree with it or not, but and then allows you to proceed forward in May at that hearing without any risk of something going awry.
So from my understanding of the Florida statutes, to fall under Chapter 723, you have to have 10 or more tenant-owned homes. We have 0 tenant-owned homes. We are a strictly Florida Statute 83 Park.
And I'm not questioning that what you're saying, that's not the issue. The issue is that the method for basically documenting and confirming that, and the method for documenting and confirming that per our development procedures manual is a notarized affidavit from the property owner attesting to that. And so the question, merely stating that on the record here, I think that's the issue. It's this.
You have to register with DBPR as a Chapter 723 park, which.
And again, I'm not questioning that you're meeting the exemption. That's not the issue. It's just more a procedural issue. Is that our procedural manuals say in order to, confirm that documentation is through a notarized affidavit, where you basically attest through a notarized affidavit that yes, I'm not a 723 mobile home park. I'm exempt from the requirements. And so the problem is procedurally, if we close the hearing tonight, the record closes and basically there's no opportunity to submit that notarized affidavit. And so all I can offer at this point is if you're insistent on proceeding forward, we can certainly review internally to see based on if your attesting on the record here tonight is sufficient to meet that requirement. Because again, the written requirement says it shall be a notarized affidavit, so.
It's up to you, whatever you want to do. You let them know. We're not a 723 park. It doesn't matter. They're on month-to-month notices with 30 days.
The question is what you're saying though is if it is, and the assumption is that this is correct information and he's presenting this verbally now, and if that is correct, are you comfortable with proceeding forward based on that testimony, or since it doesn't meet that standard,
what I'm saying is that our recommendation is, as we suggested, is continue this to May for the sole purpose of being able to submit that affidavit in the record. Again, if you do not want to continue, the best I can offer at this point is we can, between now and the board hearing, review the statute, review our requirements to see if what you've attested to on the record here tonight would be sufficient to meet the requirement. And the worst case scenario is that if we determine it's not sufficient to meet the requirement and an affidavit is required, then it would potentially result in needing to remand it back to the zoning hearing master in order to put that into the record. So that's the. So again,
out of abundance of caution.
At the abundance of caution,
I think the
offering it would be wise just to continue it to May, just again for the sole purpose of being able to submit that in the record. Again, all other testimony has been taken, so there would be no need for any additional testimony because of the fact that, again, it's solely for purposes of submitting that affidavit in the record.
Okay.
And no notice. It's just strictly, we would continue on the record to May 15th for that purpose.
All right, so I just need your agreement on the record to the continuance.
We agree to the continuance.
All right. So then we will continue rezoning PD 221702 to May 15th for the sole purpose of obtaining a notarized affidavit from the applicant regarding
that compliance with that statute, and we would put this first on the agenda, so it would be basically taken care of first, then should try to take no more than 5 minutes to do that.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, I just did it. So we'll continue rezoning 22-1702 to May 15th for the sole purpose of obtaining the affidavit. Yes, sir.
Quick follow-up question. Does what was presented on the record tonight, though, have the potential to satisfy that requirement?
What I said is we would, if again you did not want to continue, we could look at to see if what you stated on the record is sufficient to meet the standard. Again, what I'm saying is that if for some reason we determine you're not, then your worst case you're into a remand. So it's sort of like it's your. You know,
let me add this and see if it's helpful. So, Mr. Grady, am I correct in saying that the county's procedural manual requires a written notarized affidavit attesting to the fact that you don't meet the statute or you do meet the statute, right? But so you don't have an opportunity to provide that to us now, given the time frame, right?
Okay.
So if I close the hearing, you have no opportunity to provide that
Right.
because the record is closed. So the continuance provides you that to say yes or no in a notarized statement, and that's it.
Okay. It's just, I guess, wanted to get on the record whether or not a verbal of the, is, if it's not, doesn't qualify, that's all you need, or do we still need to produce an affidavit? And we can have that. We agree to the continuance, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
I think
The
opportunity is
the purpose of the continuance is to do the affidavit. So basically, it effectively would reflect what you verbally spoke to tonight, would be in a notarized affidavit format. So basically, notarized affidavit, basically saying as a property owner, I'm familiar with the statute and the exemptions, and so from what he's verbally indicated, yes. From what he's verbally indicated, it indicates he's not subject to the requirement. But as the hearing officer said, the procedural requirement is to document that compliance is through a notarized affidavit. So again, I'm not disagreeing that verbally what he said is correct. It's just, again, procedurally, it requires an affidavit. So if you didn't continue and proceeded and it was determined that we still needed a notarized affidavit, then you're subject to having a remand because there's no way to put it in the record at this point. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, appreciate it.
All right, so that application has been continued to May 15th. And now that takes us to the last case.
Yeah, the last case is item D10, PD application 23-0042. The applicant is requesting to rezone property currently zoned AS1 and AR to PD. Tim Lincoln with Development Services will provide staff comments after the applicant's presentation.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ann Pollock, 433 Central Avenue, St. Pete, Florida, representing the applicant, First Tampa Development Corporation. Tonight with me, Dmitry Archibushev with the developer. Online, we have another representative, Mike Cassins. We have Michael Razor, who is with Razor Transportation Consulting, and Amber Tomasiello with Otero. And there may be more from our team online. We are requesting a rezoning from AS1 and AR to PD to allow a 10-unit single-family subdivision at 17250 Morris Bridge Road. The property is just over 10 acres. It is in the rural service area, but it is in a suburban enclave with a Res 6 comp plan designation. The comp plan would allow 64 units, but we are only requesting 10, which is just above 1 unit per acre rather than 6. The developer will provide the necessary utilities as required in the rural service area and will not request an extension of public water or sewer. And the lots will be a minimum size to meet the requirements for sewer, for septic out in the rural service area, half acre. The property is flag-shaped, as you've seen, and I thought that was a good map of the area. It will have the single main access onto Morris Bridge Road, it's a 50-foot wide access point right there. To limit the number of access points onto Morris Bridge, the project site driveway connection there will replace the existing driveway for the property that is directly south of that flag and east of the flag pole, so to speak. It's folio 59956.5000. So it will remove their direct access, and they will then access our driveway and then exit the area onto Morris Bridge at our access point. Typically, with a 10-unit subdivision in the rural service area, we could design the project to the standards of a low-volume road. However, because we are granting that access to that other property, it's considered an 11th lot, so we no longer meet those standards. So we are providing the roadway standards of the higher level TS3, local urban road. And to do that, as part of that, we are providing sidewalks on both sides of the street. Not only does that fulfill that requirement, but it also allows for significant pedestrian connectivity in this rural suburban development that we're creating here. We're also proposing a gate. The gate will be just north of that access point for the neighboring property owner and will be built to code. We have been asked by the county to provide 2 emergency stub outs, one to the property to the east and one to the property to the west. I noticed in the record there's some opposition to that. And, you know, we don't really have any fight about this, but it appears to be, it's a county requirement. From my understanding, and this could be confirmed by the county, but it's only for emergency services like fire trucks and so on. And it wouldn't actually be used unless those neighboring properties were developed. So my understanding is those fire trucks will not be driving across their field or anything like that. So I don't think they should worry if it ends up being up to them if they develop and they want to or required to connect to our emergency stub out. Generally, we are compatible with the present and long-range configuration of Morse Bridge Road. We have requested an administrative variance because of driveway spacing issues along Morse Bridge. Even though we are removing that one driveway, there are still others that are closer than the minimum required that we are supposed to have. But the county engineer has deemed it approvable for this. The traffic analysis submitted shows 9 p.m. peak hours, which is pretty insignificant compared to the de minimis setting of 50, which you typically go into these developments with. And because it's at that low 9 peak, even with that 11th lot coming onto our thing, it's still at 9 p.m. peak hours. The determination was no further analysis or improvements would be required on Morse Bridge Road. So from an environmental perspective, as you can see, it's surrounded by Hillsborough County Park to the north and Swift Mud parks and areas. And there's some on the west side, directly to the west of the neighboring property owner. We're almost completely surrounded by it. This vicinity map that the county had, I think, really shows clearly this little area that we're talking about here amidst this natural area of this North Hillsborough County area. So there really, even though we are in this location, there are no environmentally sensitive concerns, features, overlays on the property. There are no wetlands. Another comment in the opposition stuff that we saw online was somebody mentioned that they saw a bald eagle fly by. We did a wildlife study, and we determined that there are indeed, in fact, gopher tortoises on the property, which is kind of expected in this type of area in Florida. And the developer will, of course, deal with that as appropriate and in full compliance with all regulations as they develop. But no bald eagles were found on the property. In fact, they found the only record of a bald eagle nest is from 2013, and it's more than a mile away. And that is determined to be farther than the appropriate, farther than the distance that would really be impactful by a development of this sort, which is only 700 feet. So I can submit that wildlife study into the record if that would be of assistance. Attractive stormwater retention facilities throughout the property that will meet Swift Mud requirements and help create a situation where almost 30% of the property is going to be open space. Another, and I'm just hitting these points that were made by the commenters online because I want to make sure that you understand that we have looked at them. One comment was to suggest that there are sinkholes at the property. We don't feel this is relevant to this zoning decision that you're going to be making, as the applicant would need to make sure that it meets all regulatory requirements if something should show up. But certainly, as part of the development process for doing this, they've gone out and they've hired geotech. They've hired the wildlife and all the environmental studies that might be necessary. And nothing was determined to be an issue on this site. The geotech report found that it had suitable subgrade conditions for the planned low-rise residential construction, and that with the proper construction procedures, there would be no issue. Certainly, if we went out there and it was discovered that there were sinkholes or things that looked like sinkholes, because there are a lot of other possibilities for what those could be. We also don't know where they are. They weren't identified a location. But animal activity could even be from bulls rolling around or something. So we just don't know. But we would certainly look into that as part of the development process. We did submit a detailed consistency analysis in our submittal. And Planning Commission staff have submitted a report finding the project consistent with the comprehensive plan. The property is surrounded by Res 6 land use, which allows for this low-density residential development, as well as some suburban-scale neighborhood commercial, which we are, of course, not proposing, but it shows to you the intensity that is considered appropriate for this area. And again, we're only providing 1 unit per acre as opposed to 6, which would be otherwise permitted. It is compatible with the established character of the surrounding neighborhood. It brings in much needed housing, but does so that we feel respects the rural character of the area and the surrounding natural and built environment. It incorporates large lots throughout the development and provides sidewalks to allow good pedestrian connectivity. There are no buffering requirements for this because it's adjacent to residential and agriculture uses. However, we're going to provide natural landscaping along the project access road, around the project boundaries, and use that the open space that is coming from the design of where the stormwater ponds are to assist in also providing that transition and that buffering. We also feel that it is truly compatible with the surrounding area. Compatibility is not same as, it's similar to, it's existing in harmony with. And really, although this area is outside the urban service area, it has developed with a more suburban development pattern. The Section 1.3 of the future land use element defines suburban as being a transition between urban and rural, and can be a little bit of either depending on the situation. Typically, it's 2 to 9 units per acre, and in this case, we could theoretically go to 6 units per acre, and we're only asking for 1 unit per acre. Among other things, suburban is characterized by being less compact and intense than urban development, having tracts of undeveloped land interspersed with more developed lots, generally larger than 5,000 square feet, which we definitely have here. Most of the nearby zonings allow for density equal to or greater than what we're proposing, AS1, RSC 6, 4, 2, and we are really relatively close to commercial development, social services, other major roads. We're only about 2 miles from I-75 to the west, and Temple Terrace over there. And then we are, of course, bound by the county parkland and the preserve. To the west is a vacant pasture land, and to the east is vacant pasture land right now. But immediately adjacent to that eastern property is a 50-lot subdivision called Pine Ridge Estates, with half-acre lots generally there. To the south are agricultural and residentially zoned lots. Larger ones that have been split, even though they weren't platted, but also an 88-lot subdivision of quarter-acre lots called Thousand Oaks. This is all within this general area, this enclave here on Morse Bridge Road. And then I think best of all is that idea that this little enclave here is surrounded by parkland almost completely, and so you know it's not going to get any bigger. It's not an issue of sprawl. It's an issue of keeping this suburban, rural type development here in an appropriate location and bound by the parkland. We feel that the project is compatible with the character of the surrounding area. The residential and stormwater has been designed to be compatible with the adjoining land uses. The roadways are designed to ensure adequate movement of vehicles, and certainly while it's relatively close to the nearby activity center of I-75, it does provide that transition. It helps to provide that transition between that more commercial area and the rural and parkland area to the north and west. The applicant has reached out to several adjacent neighbors ahead of filing the application. For the most part, they didn't really get much response. They talked with a few of them and didn't really hear much back. I haven't received anything, certainly, since sending the mailing out, the public mailing. So that's why we wanted to address those particular concerns that we saw online, and I don't know if they're here tonight, but we're happy to discuss any other concerns that they might have or any questions that you might have. But with that, I'll be done. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Don't forget to sign in. I don't have any further questions. Thank you. Development Services.
Good evening, Tim Lampkin, Hillsborough County Development Services for 23-0042. This property has a future land use designation of residential 6. The subject property is located on the north side of Morris Bridge Road. It's approximately 6,300 feet east of Interstate 75 interchange. The subject property is located in the rural service area. The property is not located within a community planning area. The immediate area surrounding the property is predominantly zoned for agricultural. In addition, there are single-family homes, mobile homes, and single-family development. South across Morris Bridge Road is a single-family development zoned RSC 6. Further west are more agricultural lands. Further east are pockets of neighborhood commercial areas off of Morris Bridge Road. The applicant seeks to develop the approximately 10.5-acre unified development consisting of one folio. The request is for rezoning from agricultural single-family 1 and agricultural rural to planned development to allow for a 10 dwelling unit single-family development. The applicant requests no variations or waivers. The Planning Commission found the application consistent with unincorporated Hillsborough County Development Services. There is one transportation administrative variance for the Morris Bridge access spacing pursuant to 6.04.07, and the county engineer found that request approvable. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Before we move to the Planning Commission, if I could ask Mr. Perez from the county's Transportation Review Section is still online.
Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Regarding the gated emergency access, I saw in your comments, and the applicant, Ms. Pollock's testimony that, there are concerns from the neighbors. I read the letter myself that is in optics. It's a requirement of the county technical manual, is that correct?
That is correct. Per section 60201H of the Land Development Code, the development does trigger the need for an emergency access. So at this point in time, they would stub out an emergency access to either side as they're showing on their site plan. And that would be in place for when at some future point, the adjacent properties, which also have a similar future land use designation for residential, could potentially come in for approval for subdivision. And at that point, they would have to reciprocate and meet the same emergency access requirement in which they would connect. But until such time, the emergency access stub outs would be there for that future scenario.
So, and this is just a fine point, but I just want to clarify because it will become an issue, I think. So in that those properties to the east and the west adjacent where these gated emergency access points are located are not developed currently, then this 10-lot subdivision comes in. Are they required to put up the gate and the Knox box system at this point, even though the adjacent parcels are not developed?
My understanding is that as development occurs, they have to put the infrastructure in so that it's there for the future. The first one in would be putting the gate in, so they would have a Knox box system that they'd have to construct at the time that they build the subdivision, stub out the emergency access road to the property line, and then that gate would be constructed in place and active for that future, any potential future development that would occur on the adjacent properties that would have to also connect.
But to close the issue, so even though perhaps this property owner would be required to do that, it wouldn't be used because the adjacent properties are not developed yet. Only at that time would it be used. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you so much. I just wanted to clarify that for the record. All right, we'll go to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. The subject property is located in the residential 6 future land use category. It is in the rural area and it is not located within the limits of a community plan. The subject site abuts Morris Bridge Road to the south, and the residential 6 future land use category surrounds the site to the east, south, and west. To the north and further south is natural preservation, and then further southwest there is a suburban mixed-use 6 future land use category designation. Future land use element objective 4 of the comprehensive plan notes that 20% of the growth in the region will occur within the rural area. The request includes 10 single-family lots at a minimum of 1/2 acre each. Future land use element policy 4.1 characterizes the rural area as low-density, large lot residential. The proposed development is similar in nature to the existing single-family residential land uses, especially to the south of the site. Therefore, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the surrounding area. The area to the south of the site and further east are all existing residential uses and are all zoned residential single-family conventional 2, 4, or 6. The applicant is proposing cross-access points for future connectivity to the east and west. The applicant is also proposing a minimum of 1/2 acre lots which are compatible with the surrounding lot sizes that range from over 2 acres to approximately 8,000 square feet in size. A PD rezoning would reflect a development pattern that is aligned with the existing development pattern and consistent with policy direction. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Is there anyone that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor of this application, either in the room or online? Seeing no one. Anyone to testify in opposition? All right, so we have 2 people in the room. Go ahead and come forward. Is there anyone online that would like to speak in opposition?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, so we have 3 people, so 15 minutes. That gives you 5 minutes apiece. Joe, if you could start the timer. Did you have any preference to who goes first?
Let them go first.
All right, so ma'am, if you'd like to go online, go first. You have a maximum of 5 minutes. If you give us your name and address to start.
So I go first? I'm online?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so my name is Amira Zain Lobden, and the property that me and my family own is 12728 Morris Bridge Road, Zonata, Florida, 33592. We also own the property right next door, and the address is 12744 Morris Bridge, Zonata, Florida, Morris Bridge Road. And I speak on behalf of my family when I say that we oppose this plan, and we hope to preserve the sanctity of agricultural and wildlife aspects of this area. The proposed number of houses outlined in the report does not fit the culture of this single-family wildlife and farm life neighborhood. Contrary to the project narrative that claims that there are no significant wildlife, upland habitat area, or environmental sensitive areas within the project boundary, the land is surrounded by Nature's Classroom, which is a residential environmental education program that preserves varied habitats, as well as Southwest Florida Water Management District, or SWIFMUD. The development of these housing subdivisions will disturb the habitat of all wild animals that are conserved by all neighborhoods. There are wild deer that browse in the neighboring properties, and the woman who spoke earlier said that there were no recent bald eagle sightings, and that's completely false. There's bald eagles that nest in the west of that property, in a tower as well, to the west in a tower, as well as to the east on the power lines. There are also gray foxes, and red foxes, and also bobcats that travel through this area. The gopher turtles also burrow in that land, and they haven't been, it hasn't been recorded in that project summary. And they even mark the holes with pink flags in that property. Not only will this development disrupt wildlife, but it will also generate an increase in traffic, causing congestion and an upward of traffic accidents and fatalities. The crash report that they provided falsely claimed that there were no fatalities over the course of 5 years. In November of 2021, there was a vehicle fatality that occurred directly in front of my residence. The man lost control of his vehicle and crashed into the woods, inevitably causing his death. Moreover, according to an article published by 10 Tampa Bay News, over the past 5 years since 2019, there were a total of 5 fatal accidents, as well as 158 traffic crashes that occurred on Morris Bridge Road on Zonata. There was also an interview by Jenny Alvarez, who was the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Chief Communication Officer at that time. And it was also confirmation that traffic enforcement is experiencing difficulty maintaining safe travel in this area. Also, my family, we are deer farmers, and the influx of traffic from this project will distress and endanger my captive wild deer. They are known to be easily spooked and are highly sensitive to stressful situations. Their shy nature puts them at a higher risk of severely injuring and killing themselves. Therefore, frequent accidents resulting from this development will undoubtedly trigger them to harm themselves. This is a liability that can and should be avoided. Also, the project narrative document stated that the applicant has reached out to several adjacent neighbors ahead of the filing application, and have not received any objection. But this is also false. None of us agreed to this plan. There was also a statement that there were it was also false that in their statement in the plan that as there are no negotiations for future acquisitions of our property, nor did we allow access for the access points on their plan.
All right, thank you for your comments. I really appreciate it. All right, we'll go to opposition that's in the room. Good evening. Just give us your name and address to start.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Tuning, and I live at 12858 Morris Bridge Road, and I'm speaking in opposition to this subdivision. Just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea, my family was the original owners of this property. It has been in our family for 80 years. And we had to sell the property. There was 26 acres, and we had to sell the property in 2006 due to a death in the family. And so when we sold it, we had analysis done. Our attorneys had analysis done for agriculture and the road and everything. So when we sold it, the people we sold it to, we specifically wanted rural agriculture. And a church bought half of the property because it was going to remain agriculture, and then you heard from Amira, her family bought the other half, and they are deer farmers and have animals. So moving forward, the church sold to this trucking company because the church was going to build a church, but they couldn't because they didn't get the money for it. So they sold to the trucking company. So now we're talking about a development. But initially, when the property was sold, it was all understood and it was all in agreement that it would remain agriculture. So when the property sold, we had to have an analysis done of the property, and the attorneys hired Bashirs and Associates to do an analogy of the property and everything that is around it. And I have a copy of this to give to you. They did a road analysis. Now, keep in mind, this is back in 2006. And what they said on here was that the Morris Bridge Road from I-75 to Cross Creek has an AADT of 13,100 cars with a roadway level of service of E. The current land development code requires the level of service to be between A and D. Therefore, according to the Hillsborough County Traffic Services Department, any development of the subject property that would involve subdividing the property would also require some mitigation of the roadways in order to gain approvals. Mitigation could include, but may not be limited to, installation of turn lanes. In terms of concurrency, the level of service and number of average daily trips, 13,100, Both causes the roadway to be at maximum capacity, and mitigation would be necessary in order to meet concurrency should the property be subdivided and developed as such. And that was 2006. So here we are 16 years later, and I am here to tell you that that is a rural highway, and the traffic on there, the crashes, the fatalities that were mentioned previously, it's a very dangerous road. And I actually spoke with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department to see what they could do to slow traffic down on that road. And they told me there's nothing they can do because it's a rural highway. And they said it's a rural highway through your neighborhood. And so they said the only thing they could do, and it's a rural highway because when you get off from I-75, there's nothing to slow anybody down until they get to Cross Creek, okay, which is very far away. This Pine Ridge Estates that she was talking about is not right where this is. It's down the road on a bad curve. And there's been many accidents down there, and there's been a couple fatalities on that curve. So with that being said, what the sheriff said, the only thing they can do is drop the speed limit down there. So they dropped the speed limit from 45 to 40, and they put up those, big signs that when you're driving, it tells you, hey, you're going this fast, you need to slow down. They're doing that, but they said there's absolutely nothing they can do. And I'm here to tell you that it has grown out past that area, and the cars are unbelievable. I mean, you have to sit in your driveway sometimes for 30 minutes to even get out on the road. And where this entryway into this subdivision is, if you're coming from the east side, you come up on a hill, and the entryway is right there on top of the hill. And people pass all the time on that double yellow line. My family has almost been hit. The neighbors, if you talk to the neighbors out there, because we have all been talking about this, it's terrible. So there is a lot of concern about bringing that out there, this subdivision with nothing with the roads. So that, and I have a copy of that for you as well. So that's one of the issues, that we're concerned about. The other thing is in the narrative that the developer submitted, he was talking about and you brought it up, the emergency accesses on either side. My family's property is on the east side, and we have said repeatedly, we are not selling, we are not developing. Amira's family that just spoke, they're on the west side, and they're like, we're not selling, we're not developing. But with that being said, and hearing that the projection is there could be a subdivision there, what does that mean to us? So with that being said, there's some concern because that's not accurate. We're not selling, we're in no negotiations, and it's just not we're not doing it. The other thing is I have a small cattle business, and my property backs right up to where this is going. There are multiple areas in that pasture land where it's sinking. We actually had a sinkhole, 20-foot sinkhole open up, and it swallowed one of my cows and broke her neck. And I had called the state, and the state came out there to look at that sinkhole because I was concerned because it was 20 foot deep, and I was concerned about would this dead cow in this sinkhole affect the water. And they came out and they said the aquifer was like 40, or well, I think it was like 60 feet down, and it was okay. However, that area is prone to the indentations, and they said because you're close to the river, there's a lot going on underneath that property there. And that sinkhole is probably maybe 100 feet from where they want to put their line where the retention ponds are going to be. So that, with the water issue, it's an issue, plus putting the septic right there on the Hillsborough River where, you're going to be, that goes to Tampa as well. So,
Ma'am, if I could ask you to wrap it up, we're well past the 5 minutes.
So with the animals are there. It depends on what time of the day you're there that you can see them, okay? But they are there. The ones that she mentioned, they're there. And we're concerned about them as well, and the safety of Swift Mud has animals, and Nature's Classroom has animals there. And we're concerned about all of that safety out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and you're welcome to submit anything you would like into the record with Joe and sign in as well. Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Officer. My name is Sharon Bass. I'm an attorney here in Hillsborough County. I represent Ms. Tuning and her mother, June McLaren, who live at 12858 Morrisbridge Road. My address is 9835 North 56th Street, Temple Terrace, Florida, 33617. I'll keep my comments very brief. The concern that I have relates directly to the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, Article 11, Goal 1, Policy 1.1. The concern is that homeowners in Hillsborough County do have a vested right in their property as they own it. And the impacts from development in these areas certainly have impacts on their property rights as well. And so I'm here this evening, Madam Hearing Officer, just to remind both your department and Hillsborough County Commission that this property is being used currently by landowners who have been there for a significant amount of time. The concern is about the impacts that this type of planned development is going to have on their particular business, which happens to sit right in the middle of two established agricultural uses. Because of the 10 lots being on septic, we have no idea what's going to happen with the water rights with regard to the landowners to the east or to the west. There's concerns about the light pollution and other issues that will come with having a planned development in that area. And further, that entire north side of the road there is agricultural. There's a few single-family homes, but there's nothing else there. All of the Res 6 is on the south side of the road. Simply put, this area, while it is proposed to be a Res 6 area, does it have to be? Is that the right use for this particular area, given the homeowners who are currently in place and the use of their property? And so we're simply asking for consideration from you of what our Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan goals and objectives are vis-a-vis existing landowners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you could please sign in. All right, seeing no other opposition testimony, we'll close that portion of the hearing. We'll go to Development Services. Ms. Heinrich, do you have anything else?
Nothing further.
All right, then we'll go back to Ms. Pollack. You have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. I'd like to first direct to Michael Razor, who is our transportation consultant, who can speak to some of the concerns. He's online.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michael Razor. I'm the president of Razor Transportation Consulting. I'm a registered professional engineer with 26 years of experience with a specialization in traffic engineering. Address is 19046 Bruce D. Downs Boulevard, number 308, Tampa 33647, and I have not been sworn.
All right. You can, and anybody else in the room, I think we're past this point, but do you swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I'd like to talk about some of the traffic items that have come up in the testimony. I'd like to start with the Morris Bridge 2006 evaluation that was referenced. The traffic volumes on Morris Bridge Road are approximately 13,000. However, I don't have access to the 2006 analysis, but in the staff report produced by county staff, the level of service identified for this segment of Morris Bridge Road was C compared to a D standard. The operational capacity may have been incorrectly evaluated back in 2006 as on an arterial road rather than a highway segment, which is the case as we've heard. So again, level of service is met, and that is in the staff report. And there's also been a change in the regulations since 2006 where the county eliminated concurrency in favor of the mobility fee program. So regardless of there being a deficiency on a road, we are now into mobility fees and pay and go. So that wouldn't have been material regardless, but in fact, it level service C compared to a D standard. The crash data that was referenced previously was from the county sources, the county's traffic crash database. So if there was something missing from that database, that would be a county issue. We have spoken with the county engineer multiple occasions. I've been involved in 2 specific meetings with Mr. Williams, Michael Williams, and there's been no discussion regarding concerns about any atypical crash safety for this segment of Morris Bridge Road. There was also a reference to a vertical curve, perhaps providing adverse conditions for the location of the driveway connection. I can assure you that in going through the permitting, we're not quite there yet, but in going through the permitting process, site visibility, both horizontal and vertical, will be looked at in detail, and we certainly couldn't build a driveway connection that is not safe. I'd like to conclude back to traffic safety, and I apologize for jumping around. My notes were plentiful. Morris Bridge Road within Hillsborough County from the interstate segment up to Pasco County is about 10 miles in length. We're in the first approximate mile of that distance. There's no doubt that in the easterly and northerly portions of that, which consist of 8.5 miles or so of that road, it is a fairly straight shot with 2 lanes and nature. So speeds are probably excessive in that particular area due to the nature of that road and its configuration and alignment and the lack of development along that road. And so where you have excessive speeds, excessive crashes can follow. Again, we are on a segment that's relatively close to the interstate. And speaking with the county engineer on multiple occasions, there's been no discussion regarding any atypical safety characteristics.
Thank you very much.
Of course, I'm here for questions. Thank you.
Just wanted to make sure I had enough time just to address a few other things.
Ms. Pollock, I'll give you a little extra time as the opposition testimony went a little long.
Appreciate that. I'm going to submit into the record just an email and a brief summary of the geotech report that we had done so that you can see their findings, and that additional geotechnical testing would occur if they were to determine that there was a sinkhole issue or some other type of issue out on the property. Again, the owners are not interested in building a development that would be unsafe either for their own homeowners or cause a problem on the neighboring properties, and really wouldn't be allowed to anyway due to regulations. With regard to the animals, there's no doubt there's animals in this area. We're right near this major parkland area. We don't expect there to not be animals, but the owners are required to test and study to see if there are those animals, I believe within 90 days of submitting for permits for construction plan. And so at that point, they would go out, even though our report from 2022 says no bald eagle nests were identified near the property, closer than even a mile away. You know, that would be something if they saw bald eagle's nests close. Gopher tortoises on the property, those would have to be, the property would have to be, their development would have to reflect their location, or they would have to be relocated as necessary, but they would have to do that to meet the needs. And, you know, they expect to develop in a way that reflects that we are in this area of sort of a rural suburban development, and recognizing that there is agricultural nearby. That will be part of their development plan. And if I can just have the owners just give 1 minute just to.
Hello, it's Dimitri Artsabusha, First Tampa Development Corp., 1525 West Hillsborough, Tampa, Florida. Our intent is to develop a nice development to blend in as much as it can. We're going to leave as many trees as we can on the outside edges, and where we can, we'll save what we can. As you know, it's hard to do that always, but we will do what we can to try to keep as many trees up as possible, so the squirrels and all those will be fine out there. Yes, we got to do our own studies, and we'll check for the geotechnical, be sure there's no problems with sinkhole issues, and we will also do all the wildlife studies to be sure that there's no issues, and we'll deal with the gopher tortoises as we're legally supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Just one more comment with regard to the water table and water flow. We've had to have several meetings with SwiftMud already about how we're addressing stormwater and how we're addressing our ponds. And based on the topography and the requirements that they've already told us, and we're not even to that next step, that is something that is definitely being taken into consideration as this development goes forward, so that we have the least impact on surrounding property owners from whatever happens with the water. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate that. Then with that, we'll close rezoning 23-0042 and adjourn the hearing. Thank you all for your time and testimony.